Chapter 1505. Eternal Night Primogenitor was a peak ascended god expert from Eternal Night sect 100,000 years ago. His real name was Long River, and he was the 37th sect master of Eternal Night sect. After becoming primogenitor, he named himself Eternal Night. Ever since Eternal Night Primogenitor appeared, Eternal Night sect status in the immortal world rose. Even though Eternal Night almost never came into contact with Eternal Night sect, Eternal Night sect still saw him as their true god. Seeing Eternal Night Primogenitor appear, everyone present knelt on the ground in excitement and cheered loudly. "Rise, everyone," Eternal Night Primogenitor said calmly, but he didn't intentionally look at Eternal Night sect. In his eyes, everything seemed indifferent. He had no desires, and he didn't care about anything. "Thank you, Primogenitor." Everyone cheered and stood up. Primogenitor slowly landed in the huge, open area in the center, where the stone stele was about to be unsealed. Since the Primogenitor had arrived, the stone stele would definitely appear as well. As expected, not long after the Primogenitor arrived, the center of the ruins lit up. The ground cracked, and a large amount of light shot out from the cracks, accompanied by an incomparably dense ancient power. "It's out!" someone exclaimed. The surrounding immortals fixed their eyes on it, feeling it with their hearts. The ancient power was like a gust of wind blowing on everyone's faces. It was so dense and profound. The immortals greedily absorbed the ancient power, but had come too suddenly and too fiercely. They could only sense how powerful and shocking it was, but they couldn't comprehend it in such a short time. Rumble, at this moment, the ground suddenly trembled, and the cracks suddenly closed up. At the center, a huge hole appeared in everyone's line of sight, accompanied by a ray of seven-colored light. This light was like a heavenly pillar piercing through the sky. Very soon, there seemed to be a huge stone tablet faintly discernible within the heavenly pillar. "It's here. The ancient stone stele has appeared." Everyone stood up excitedly, staring at the heavenly pillar. They couldn't move their eyes away. Only one person can enter the heavenly pillar of light. Not only will you be able to get a glimpse of the intent on the stone tablet, but you'll also be able to feel the countless ancient, mysterious powers contained within the heavenly pillar of light. The benefits are simply indescribable. If you can enter, you'll have no regrets in life. However, it's useless to enter such a miraculous place for too short a period of time. If it's too long, it'll be difficult. The stone tablet only appears once every 100,000 years. It's too short. Actually, although the stone tablet has appeared, we can't enter it yet. There's still 30 days before it opens. What we see now is only an incomplete stone tablet. In 30 days, the stone tablet will be truly opened. Only then will immortals be allowed to enter. What? It's not really open yet? So now, we're just taking advantage of the fact that it's about to open to select people to enter the heavenly pillar of light, to comprehend the stele. I see. Eternal Night Primogenitor stared at the pillar of light for a long time before turning around. Looking at the sea of immortals around him, he said calmly, "The opportunity has appeared. Everyone, please prepare yourselves. According to the rules set by our ancestors, I will conduct the selection ceremony for those who can comprehend the stone tablet. This selection will be conducted in a fair manner. If there are any despicable acts that violate the rules, the punishment will be the wiping of one's soul. This will not be tolerated. I hope you all will behave yourselves." Eternal Night's emotionless voice caused everyone's hearts to tighten. Wiping out one's soul? That meant completely killing. How harsh. The primogenitors didn't need to care about anyone's feelings. If they sincerely wanted to host this competition, it would naturally be absolutely fair and just. Eternal Night began to announce the rules of the competition. The rules he mentioned were also the rules that had been used in previous competitions. The immortals had unanimously agreed that there wouldn't be any loopholes. The competition will be divided into 3 rounds. The time limit is 30 days. There are no restrictions on those who can participate. As long as you are an immortal, you can participate regardless of your cultivation. But first, I have to make one thing clear. The competition will be conducted with one's full strength. During the competition, there are no restrictions on the methods used. Therefore, it is common for people to lose their lives and have their cultivation crippled. In the previous competitions, there were countless immortals who lost their lives and their cultivation crippled. Therefore, you all must be mentally prepared to consider whether or not to participate in the competition. After all, there are only 2 slots. Of course, other than the right to comprehend the stone tablet, I will choose another 10 people to be my in-name disciples. I will teach them for 10 days. In these 10 days, I will impart all the knowledge I have gained after reaching the primogeniture realm. Although the effect might not be better than the stone tablet, it shouldn't be too far off. Eternal Night Primogenitor said calmly. As the sound of his voice faded, everyone was incomparably excited. The teachings of the primogenitor were naturally something that could only be chanced upon and not sought. Including the right to comprehend, there were 12 slots. It looked like a lot, but with the millions of people present, the number was pitifully small. You all already know the general rules of the competition, right? Now, let's begin the first round. Eternal Night Primogenitor said indifferently. He then leaped into the air and flew into the sky. His hand turned into a palm and lightly slapped downwards. A mysterious primogenitor's power seeped out from his palm and gently struck the ground below. The ground started to change and gave birth to many gigantic palaces. In the blink of an eye, in the central region, he used the primogenitor's power to form a gigantic city. The city seemed to be completely made out of gold. It was noble and luxurious, with a resplendent golden light. Anyone who looked at it would be deeply attracted. Suyin looked around and realized that outside the palace in the city, there was a statue standing there. The statue just happened to block the entrance of the palace, as though it was guarding the palace. Every statue was different. There were those with the head of a horse and the body of a human. There were those with the wings of a wild lion. There were also those with the form of a human. And there were also those with the form of a beast. This is the gold sacred city. If any of you participated in the previous large competition, you should not be unfamiliar with it. This was not created by me, but by a peerless expert who had comprehended the city. No one knows where that expert is now, but there is no need to doubt his ability. He created this city and hid some of his own cultivation techniques and methods in the city's palace. Other than him, there are 2 other people who have also placed their own cultivation techniques and experiences inside. There are a total of 50 palaces here, and every single one of them is guarded by a powerful mechanical immortal beast. If you are able to successfully defeat the mechanical immortal beast and obtain the inheritance inside, you will be able to enter the second round of the competition. Eternal Night Primogenitor said slowly. His words were like a bomb, causing the hearts of all the immortals present to tremble. They cannot believe their own ears. This golden city was a treasure left behind by the ancestor. This was too crazy. This was too crazy. If he could obtain the treasures of a palace, what kind of convenience would it bring to his cultivation? Suyin could clearly feel that the breathing of the immortals around him had become hurried, and everyone's eyes were filled with a dense passion. I want to make it clear in advance. It is best for those below the god realm to not enter. Of course, if you are confident in your own strength, you can enter, but you will have to bear the consequences yourself. Eternal Night Primogenitor said indifferently, then shouted loudly. Then, I will now announce the first round of the Stone Monument Competition. Gold Sacred City, now open, the large competition begins. His voice spread out in all directions, shaking everyone's eardrums, shaking everyone's hearts, their souls. The large competition had begun. Clank! The halo around the Gold Sacred City suddenly flickered. Following that, the restrictions around the Gold Sacred City suddenly disappeared, and it was completely opened. When the surrounding immortals saw this, they scrambled to be the first to rush inside. There was a limit to how long the restrictions could be opened. If one did not enter at the first moment, they would be disqualified. However, after passing through the restrictions and entering the Gold Sacred City, people would directly crash into a layer of spatial barrier behind the restrictions. The spatial barrier would automatically activate when the immortals collided with it, and the people who collided with it would randomly be transported to any place in the Gold Sacred City. Thus, people who came in groups could not travel together in the Gold Sacred City, unless they were extremely lucky to meet each other in the gigantic Gold Sacred City. Let's go. Star Sage stared at the Gold Sacred City with a burning gaze and bellowed. The experts of the Star Pavilion all stood up. It's time to show off our skills. Huh. Divine Lion King laughed out loud and brought the experts of the Divine Lion Sect in. All of you stay here. I will go in alone. Seven Emotions Goddess smiled at the people of the Seven Emotions Palace, then leaped and floated towards the Gold Sacred City. Seven Emotions Palace Mistress, shall we go together? Wine King Pavilion's Etion Xing smiled, but he was just joking. This time, the Wine King Pavilion did not dare to slack off. He drank a few mouthfuls of divine wine that increased his power, then also rushed towards the Gold Sacred City. In the first round, no matter what, we must find a way to obtain the inheritance of an almighty. Ancient Arisex Gu Exine shouted in a low voice, then rushed towards the Gold Sacred City. You better not provoke me. Selfless Sword coldly swept his gaze over the immortals present. One man with one sword. He leaped forward, his aura piercing through the sky, and crashed into the Gold Sacred City. A sacred path led to the Gold Sacred City, and on the sacred path, a figure lightly stepped on it. It was a genius of the divine path, a Tao disciple. Experts rushed towards the Gold Sacred City, and they were all fighting to be the first, but they were also extremely excited. Lung Xinru led a few experts of the ancient celestial gods' council, and accompanied by loose immortal drunk happy, as they unhurriedly advanced towards the Gold Sacred City. All the palaces are mine, a bunch of ants. How dare you have such thoughts? Lung Xinru said coldly. The ancient celestial gods' council had always been tyrannical, and this time, Lung Xinru did not plan to be polite. Tyrants stood in great numbers, and experts were as many as the clouds. But in Su Yun's eyes, it was an endless challenge, causing his blood to boil, and he was extremely excited. Let's go. Su Yun bellowed. Dao Shi, Heavenly Emperor, and Hao Zhu nodded, then followed Su Yun and flew towards the Gold Sacred City. The first battle of the large competition had finally begun. Chapter 1506. The power of space filled the air. Su Yun's eyes flickered, and when he regained consciousness, he was already standing somewhere in the Gold Sacred City. He raised his head and looked around, only to find that there was no one around. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. The interior of the Gold Sacred City was huge. So many immortals had rushed in, but there was no one around him. It was enough to show how terrifying the Gold Sacred City was. Inside the Sacred City, it was filled with ancient qi, and it was even more powerful than the place he had cultivated before. Su Yun was not in a hurry to defeat the palace statue and enter the palace to obtain the inheritance. Instead, he sat down cross-legged and started to cultivate. Although there were many people, it was not easy to defeat the statues. After all, the mechanical statues themselves were already very terrifying. How could they be defeated so easily? Furthermore, everyone was staring at the 50 statues, and there were not many monks. Even if they had the ability to defeat the statues, the immortals would not let them do so. Cultivating on the spot and recuperating was the best choice. The ancient qi here was so dense, and to Su Yun, who was currently using the power of the pseudo-ancestor, the benefits were self-evident. The small world in his body had an indescribable connection with the ancient qi, and the small world could easily sense the mysterious qi contained within the ancient qi, and could rely on the qi to catalyze the development of the small world, allowing the civilization of the small world to improve quickly and then raise his cultivation, allowing him to step into the pseudo-ancestor realm even faster, and step into the true ancestor realm. The people of the pseudo-ancestor realm only had a small world in their bodies, and everything else was still in the God-sealing realm. They could not use much of the ancestors' aura, and most of them were still based on the power of creation. To raise a person to the pseudo-ancestor realm, They naturally needed a great opportunity, and they needed the ancestor to open up a small world for them. Otherwise, they could only slowly advance from the God-sealing realm to the ancestor realm, and he would never be able to enter the pseudo-ancestor realm. Suyin knew that he was lucky, so he had to grasp all of this well. He sat there for 2 days and could feel the smell of blood in the air gradually becoming denser. During this period of time, many immortals passed by, but they only glanced at Su Yun and did not care. It was just that he did not know where the great Emperor Dao Shi and ancestor Hao were. The holy city was so huge, it would not be easy for the two of them to find Su Yun. But just at this moment, a strong killing intent was suddenly caught by Su Yun. He frowned, stood up, and looked, only to see a large group of experts from the Star Pavilion walking over, and the person in the lead was the Star Lord. Seeing Su Yun sitting alone in the middle of the road, the Star Sage was slightly startled, but then his mouth raised into a sinister smile. "Looks like the heavens want you to die by my hands." Venerable Stellar said coldly, killing intent flashing in his eyes. Su Yun had humiliated him multiple times, so he naturally hoped that Su Yun would die. Furthermore, if he killed Su Yun, his relationship with the Wine King Pavilion's Etian Shing would definitely improve. And at that time, he, the Star Venerable, would be able to enjoy the Wine King Pavilion's fine wine, and the benefits would naturally be countless. Now that Su Yun had appeared here alone and could do whatever he wanted in the Gold Sacred City, this was a good opportunity bestowed upon him by the heavens. "Oh!" Su Yun opened his eyes and looked at the people from the Star Pavilion, then said indifferently, "I never thought that the first group of people I would kill here would actually be from your Star Pavilion." "Kill? You sure are confident, but I don't know where you get the confidence to say that you will kill me," the Star Sage said coldly, and then with a wave of his hand, a group of figures appeared behind him, and among these figures, there was also a terrifying existence at the peak of the God Realm. Su Yun did not recognize that person, but they were staring at him with hostility. "You found a helper?" Su Yun frowned and asked. "I know I'm not your match, but you're too arrogant. You seized a treasure like the Heavenly Will Sword, but you don't know how to restrain yourself, and you don't even know that you're being targeted. This is the sect leader of the Hoyang Sword sect. If he cooperates with me, I'll take your life, and he'll take your Heavenly Will Sword." It turned out that these people had their eyes on the Heavenly Will Sword that Su Yun had pulled out from the stone. They had also watched from the side and wanted to go forward to pull out the sword, but Su Yun had snatched it away first. At that time, there were too many people, and it was not convenient for them to make a move, so they planned to make a move during the competition. The competition grounds were in chaos, and as long as one had the means, no one would care about what they did. I never thought that there would actually be people who coveted this Heavenly Will Sword. I don't know whether to be happy or helpless, but since you've chosen to be my enemy, then prepare to die. Su Yun stood up and pulled out the Heavenly Will Sword. Here, he did not need to hold back. "Arrogant. We have 2 experts at the peak of the God Realm here, and countless God Realm and Origin Deity Realm existences. What right do you think you have to be our enemy?" The Star Sage said coldly, a trace of disdain flashing past his eyes. Su Yun was alone. How could he fight against everyone? He simply did not know what he was talking about. At a time like this, he still wanted to save face. This made the Star Sage extremely unhappy. "If you are willing to hand over the Heavenly Will Sword, cripple your own cultivation, and leave this gold sacred city, I can plead with the Star Sage to spare your life," the Hoyang Swordmaster said. "What the Hoyang Swordmaster said is also my intention. Brat, if you know what's good for you, you'd better do as we say. That way, you can save your life. Don't be too arrogant, or else you'll be the one to regret it." The way he saw it, Su Yun was already a piece of meat on his chopping board, and now no one could save Su Yun. Although Su Yun originally had 2 experts at the peak of the God Realm, he was so unlucky that he was completely separated from the 2 of them, while his own side was astonishingly lucky. Not only did he summon his disciples in an extremely short period of time, he even met with the powerful external help of the Hoyang Swordmaster. Originally, the Star Sage had planned to defeat Su Yun after the large competition, repay the humiliation, and ruthlessly trample on him. But from the looks of it, it would not be as easy to find trouble with Su Yun after the large competition. After all, there were still 2 experts by Su Yun's side, and even if he joined forces with the 7 Emotions Goddess and Pavilion Master, Tian Xing, he would not be able to do anything to Su Yun unless he fought alone, and since he had already formed an enmity with Su Yun, there was no need to be polite. This person had to be eliminated. If not, his Star Pavilion would not be at peace in the future. Suya did not want to waste words with these people, but there were a lot of enemies, and they were not weak. Although he had the pseudo-ancestor realm to deal with so many experts, even if he won, he would consume a lot of energy. This was extremely disadvantageous for him to obtain the inheritance from the palace, and he had to conserve his strength to deal with the later matters. How could Suya not understand the Star Sage's thoughts? He knew that the Star Sage was in a hurry to kill him. After thinking for a moment, he turned around and leaped, rushing towards the nearest palace. You want to escape? Too naive. The Hoyong Swordmaster and the Star Sage took action at the same time, chasing after him. The 2 of them were extremely fast, like lightning. The terrifying power of creation swept out in all directions like a storm, causing the surrounding immortals to not dare to approach. Once the strength of the peak of the God-conferred realm made their move, who below the peak of the God-conferred realm would dare to fight against them? There were originally a lot of people gathered around the palace, intending to join hands to shatter the statue and enter the palace to snatch the inheritance. However, when the Star Sage and the Hoyong Sword Master rushed over, they immediately stopped their movements and scattered in all directions, not daring to get close, afraid that they would be affected. The experts at the peak of the God-conferred realm were much stronger than them, and if there was a peak expert who had his eyes on a palace, no one would dare to fight for it. Once there was a fight, it would be an earth-shattering battle. To put it bluntly, in the first round of the competition, as long as one was at the peak of the God-conferred realm, they would be able to smoothly advance. As for those below the middle stage of the God-conferred realm, they would have to start snatching after those at the peak of the God-conferred realm picked out the leftovers. However, the following competition was often very cruel. After all, there were too many people entering the Gold Sacred City, especially the sects and powers. On the other hand, the Robe Immortals did not have that many opportunities. Su Yin was not in a hurry to get rid of the 2 of them. When he approached the palace, his speed immediately slowed down. The Hoyong Sword Master thrusted his sword over. The sword body was like a blazing sun, releasing a 10,000-meter-long sword light. It was extremely dazzling, as though it was going to swallow the entire palace. Su Yun was not in a hurry to retaliate, but turned his head and stared at the silent statue. Suddenly holding onto the heavenly sword, he fiercely slashed at the statue. Boom! The terrifying sword force swept out and engulfed the entire statue. The restrictions on the statue were broken, and the statue came to life. Endless power surged out, and its aura was extremely terrifying. The statue was created by the hands of a supreme expert and was extremely terrifying. It roared, releasing an angry roar, shattering the incoming sword beams and sword force, and glared at the uninvited guests who dared to approach the palace. This power scared many immortals away. The Hoyong Swordmaster and the Star Sage looked at Su Yun and the statue in confusion. What is this guy doing? Could it be that he wants to use us to help him defeat the statue guards of the palace? This is simply wishful thinking. Are we such stupid people? The Hoyong Sword Master snorted. Lord Sword Master, it is better not to underestimate this person's strength. To be honest, his strength is above mine. If we do not join hands, I am afraid we will not be able to do anything to him. The Star Sage said in a low voice. Although he did not want to admit it, it was the truth. If he continued to deceive himself at this critical juncture, he would definitely suffer. Lord, do not belittle yourself. I see that this person is just selling his head. How about this? Lord, you go and restrain the statue. I will go and meet that arrogant person. After I snatch his heavenly sword, I will personally capture him and bring him to you. You can do whatever you want to him. The Hoyong Sword Master bellowed and rushed forward. Lord Sword Master, Be careful. The Star Sage called out but did not stop him. Since someone wanted to help him take care of Su Yun, why not? Chapter 1507. The Gold Sacred City was already bustling with activity. Countless supreme experts had gone down to the sacred city to snatch the benefits from the palace and obtain the chance to participate in the next large competition. Outside, countless pairs of eyes were staring at everything that was happening in the sacred city, and inside were Su Qing'er and Long Xinli. Originally, after the two of them entered the immortal world, they planned to return to Su Yun's encampment to look for him. But before the two of them could leave the Sky Martial Continent, they met with experts from the Eternal Heaven Gods Council. This time, the experts sent by the Eternal Heaven Gods Council were not simple people, but trusted aides of the four heavenly kings, and were incomparably strong. Fortunately, Su Qing'er's current strength was no longer the same as before, and she was able to barely protect the sword, but this also made the two girls understand that the sword had already been completely targeted by the supreme expert of the immortal world, and if this continued, it would definitely not be able to be kept. If they wanted to keep the sword safe, there was only one way, and that was to hand the sword to a powerful existence, and this existence would not casually use the sword to ensure the safety of the myriad worlds. In truth, only Su Yun met this condition, so the two of them did not even go to the encampment, but directly went to look for Su Yun, but they were a step too late. Su Yun had already entered the sacred city. This guy, where is he? Long Xinli stared at the sacred city in the center. Although the sacred city was big from the outside, it could be seen clearly, as though it had been shrunk by 10 times. But Su Yun had disguised himself, so they were unable to find out who Su Yun was. Long Xinli frowned. In truth, she was standing there, feeling extremely uneasy. Although she had been cultivating her mind for all these years, her cultivation was not high, and the existences around her, to her, were like true gods. She had never faced such a scene before, and no matter how long she cultivated her mental state, she would more or less have some ripples. But to the current her, wasn't this a challenge to her mental state? After a while, Long Xinli's nervousness eased a lot, although she was still not used to it, but with her cultivation, it was already a miracle. On the other hand, Qing'er, who was at the side, was like a mirror without any ripples. Her bright and beautiful eyes stared at the gold sacred city, and the light from the sacred city shone on her fair face, making her look like a goddess. The immortals at the side inadvertently glanced over and couldn't move their eyes away. Even immortals would fall into a daze as they stared at that beautiful woman. Where did this fairy come from? How could she be so outstanding? Some immortals were already unable to restrain themselves and walked forward to strike up a conversation. However, Qing'er was like a block of ice. No one dared to approach her, causing many people to be rebuffed. Hey, I say, all of you, get away from me. Don't disturb the beauty's mood. At this moment, a clear laughter floated over from the side. Long Xinli turned her head slightly and saw a few immortals dressed in clean and luxurious clothes walking over. There were both men and women among these immortals. Their cultivations were not considered strong, but the magic treasures they wore were extremely extraordinary. It was obvious that they were the descendants of almighty beings. Of course, not all the experts had entered the Gold Sacred City to participate in the competition. Amongst the spectators, there were many powerful existences. However, Su Qing'er acted as if she did not hear the man's words and continued to stare at the Gold Sacred City, as if she was already isolated from the world. The few of them frowned, feeling somewhat displeased. Was the other party ignoring him? On the other hand, the man at the front smiled, walked to Qing'er's side, and said softly, "You two fairies are so unfamiliar to be able to cause the downfall of a country. Such peerless beauties. If I were to take a look at you, I will definitely remember you. I wonder where the two fairies are from, and if I am lucky enough to be friends with the two fairies." He spoke very politely and softly, coupled with his extraordinarily handsome face and outstanding temperament. Li Yundong could not help but admire him. Su Qing'er acted as if she did not hear anything, but Long Xinli frowned. She felt that if this continued, something would definitely happen, But she did not understand this place and did not know how to retort, so she did not make a sound. Finally, the men on the man's side could not take it anymore, and one of them, who had a pretty face but a fiery temper, spoke out angrily. "Hey, are the two of you deaf? Didn't you hear us talking to you? What business do you have with us?" Finally, Su Ching'er spoke, but her voice was extremely calm, like an ancient well without any ripples. Her spirit chi made people unable to see through her depth, while Long Xianli's could be seen with a glance that her strength was not high. Seeing that the beauty had finally spoken, the man was very happy and laughed. "It's nothing much, it's just that seeing the two fairies alone in this deserted corner. I am curious, the two fairies' temperament is outstanding, and your looks are intoxicating. I wonder what kind of blessed land has nurtured two such outstanding beauties. I am very curious. If the two fairies do not mind, can we be friends? Oh, I am Guimo. My father is Gu Exin, the sect leader of the ancient world sect. If the two fairies think that I am being rude, please forgive me. I have disturbed you." Guimo, Gu Exion's son. This was truly a person with a great background. If one were to ask who had the highest chance of obtaining the right to comprehend the stone tablet, it would be the peak of the god realm, and there were not many of them. Divine Lion Sect, Divine Lion King, Seven Emotions Goddess, Star Sage, Jin Jinzi, Doubt Disciple, Wu Sword Master of the Back Sun, and the others, including the 6 expert from the 10,000 Ancient Gods Council and the 3 people from Su Yun's side. Roughly speaking, the number of peak God Realm experts participating in the Great Stone Tablet competition in the immortal world was only about 20, and Gu Xian occupied one of the spots. Perhaps the number of 20 was still very large compared to the 2 spots. The probability of obtaining the right to comprehend the stone tablet was less than 1 in 10, but if the 10 spots were to receive guidance from the primogenitor, it would be a different story. In other words, roughly half of the people would receive guidance from the Eternal Night primogenitor and become his in-name disciple, receiving reward from the primogenitor. Not only would it be an immeasurable benefit, it would also be an honor that others would revere. This was something that the immortals of the immortal world would not even dare to think about. Guimo knew that after this competition, the ancient world sect would rise rapidly. Even if his father could not obtain the right to comprehend the stone tablet, he would at least be able to attempt to break through to the primogenitor realm with the guidance of the Eternal Night primogenitor. Once Gu Xian successfully stepped into the primogenitor realm, Guimo would be able to move unhindered in the myriad of worlds. Because of this, many of the sects that were on good terms with the ancient world sect sent their juniors to build a good relationship with Guimo. If the ancient world sect were to rise, they would at least be protected. Guimo was not an idiot. He knew that all of this was given to him by his father, but he enjoyed the glory. Although it was not brought about by himself, he was Gu Xian's son, and that was enough. "Oh, I want to befriend Fairy." Guimo laughed. "I'm sorry, I'm not interested. Please leave, don't disturb my peace." Qing said indifferently, "How dare you? Who do you think you are? Who is young Master Gu? Being on good terms with you is giving you face, but you don't know what's good for you, and dare to say such words? I'm giving you face, but you don't want it." The hot-tempered lady did not say a word and rushed forward to slap Qing's face. Ever since Guimo noticed Qing, she was unhappy with her. She was instructed by her family to get close to Guimo with the intention of becoming his dual cultivation partner, but Guimo was not enthusiastic towards her. Although the two of them would flirt occasionally, she could tell that Guimo only liked her for her body and did not care much about her as a person. This made her disappointed because since young, she had always been the center of attention. She was a young miss of the immortal aristocratic Yin family. She was born with a special physique and had countless suitors. She did not need to care about others, but now, everything was different. The ancient world sect was rising, and Gu Xian had become a seated participant in the Great Stone Tablet competition. If a small sect like the Yin family wanted to grow, they had to rely on the big sections. She was assigned to get close to Guimo, and initially, she was not interested in this matter, but Guimo was not infatuated with her, and this made her furious. Who could ignore her? In truth, Guimo only liked Yin Yu's body. As for becoming her dual cultivation partner, He did not even consider it. He knew what the men and women who surrounded him were thinking. The men called him brother. The women threw flirtatious glances at him. They were just trying to gain some benefits from him. But he did not point it out. To him, they were all controlled by him, and he only needed to enjoy the joy they brought him. As for the so-called dual cultivation partner, he naturally had to find someone more outstanding. As the future successor of the ancient world sect, how could he be replaced by these lowly people? But Ching-er's appearance completely changed Gumo's mind. He secretly shouted in his heart. No matter who she was, he had to get her. But Ching-er's next words were extremely cold. Scram, 10 breaths of time. If you guys are not leaving after 10 breaths of time, I will start a massacre. Ching opened her mouth, leaving no room for discussion. Start a massacre? Hearing that, everyone became curious. What was this place? This was the Great Stone Tablet competition area, with the Eternal Night Primogenitor overseeing it. Who dared to be impudent here? Before the Eternal Night Primogenitor arrived, the conflicts between the immortals were nothing. But now that the Primogenitor was here, who dared to be impudent in front of him? Guillermo was stunned, but the people behind him were already laughing out loud. What an arrogant tone! Is this woman crazy? Heh, she doesn't have much ability, but her tone is not small. I want to see what she is capable of. No one thought that Ching-er was serious. Chapter 1508. Ever since Su Ching-er successfully completed her transformation and came out from the ominous sword, Long Xianli felt that she was extremely unfamiliar, as though the Su Ching-er that she knew was no longer the strong, brave, and innocent Su Ching-er from before. The current Su Ching-er had become mysterious and unfathomable, not only in terms of strength. Even her thoughts were unfathomable. The surrounding people laughed out loud, and you laughed even more disdainfully, and said, "Seems like not only are you arrogant, your brain is also not too good. How did such a stupid woman come here? Could it be that anyone can participate in the Sacred Stone Tablet competition? Young master, let's go. What's there to say to such a stupid woman?" The people at the side laughed. "Go. This stupid woman insulted us. How can we just leave like that? If we don't let her suffer a bit, she will think that we are afraid of her." Inu did not plan to let Su Ching-er go. She hated this woman, regardless of her temperament or her appearance. They all made her uncomfortable. Such a perfect woman. Simply made other women jealous. She wanted to destroy this woman. Guillermo obviously did not plan to give up. If Su Ching-er was really a stupid woman, he would be very happy. Such a woman was the easiest to deal with. But in the next second, Su Ching-er turned around. She looked at them indifferently and said indifferently, "I've already given you a chance, but you did not cherish it, so don't blame me." "What do you mean?" Guillermo felt that something was wrong. But in the next second, the space around them suddenly distorted, and a large amount of terrifying spatial energy came pressing towards them like a wall. One of the immortals at the outermost area was caught off guard and was directly touched by the spatial energy, and a huge wound was immediately cut open on his body, as though his body would melt upon contact. It was extremely terrifying. This unparalleled spatial energy, just what was going on. Everyone wanted to break through, but just as they released their power, they were devoured by the spatial energy. At the same time, they realized that the power in their chi meridians seemed to be absorbed by something, surging out of their bodies and frantically surging outwards, completely out of their control. At this moment, they understood that they had offended a true powerhouse. This woman was not some weak person. On the contrary, she was very strong, unimaginably strong. What she said was not boasting. Guillermo was extremely regretful, especially Inu. She was so scared that her entire body was trembling. Ching-er actually had such terrifying strength. She was not joking, nor was she stupid. However, the current situation was not considered serious. Guillermo took a deep breath and shouted at Ching-er, "Senior, please be merciful. We were ignorant and offended, Senior. Please forgive us. Spare our lives." Too late. Su Ching-er said expressionlessly, and continued to use the power of space to move towards the people in the middle. "Senior, I beg you, please spare our lives. You're a great person. Please forgive me. Spare our lives. We were wrong. We had eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai. Senior, please spare us. Please spare us. These people screamed and begged for mercy. This terrifying power of space was enough to tear their souls apart. Once they were struck by the power of space, everything would dissipate. Even if they were skilled in resurrection techniques, it would be impossible to revive them. It's too late. Su Qing'er still said those two words. Her eyes were cold, and she did not show any mercy. Long Xianli stood at the side and watched the scene quietly. She sighed. She wanted to advise Su Qing'er, but she knew that it was useless. The commotion attracted the attention of many immortals. Seeing Su Qing'er skillfully activating the power of space, and with such ease, they all thought that she was a supreme being and could not be provoked. Stop! Just then, a roar came out. Following that, a man dressed in a brown robe rushed over. Everyone looked over. It was the great clan elder of the ancient world sect, Gu He. He gathered the power of creation in one hand and struck towards Su Qing'er with the intention of forcing her to retreat. But just at that moment, Su Qing'er suddenly raised her hand and grabbed towards Gu He, completely ignoring Gu He's technique. A burst of spatial energy jumped in her palm. Gu He's strength instantly disappeared, and his body started to distort. With a bang, Gu He fell to the ground. All the bones in his body were dislocated. All the chi meridians and blood vessels were shattered. His cultivation was completely crippled, and he fell to the ground, gasping for breath. He used the power of creation. Then, he was an expert of the conferred God realm. A person of the conferred God realm couldn't even take one move from this woman. The surrounding immortals all sucked in a breath of cold air. Some of the people who were planning to curry favor with the ancient world sect and save Gu Mo immediately stopped in their tracks, not daring to move. It was obvious that this woman was at least an expert at the peak of the conferred God realm. If not, how could she be so terrifying? Gu Mo, Yin and the rest were so shocked that their scalps were about to explode. Their souls almost left their bodies. This method was extremely terrifying, especially Gu Mo. His heart was already extremely cold. When Gu He appeared, he thought that the matter would end there. But when he saw that Gu He's cultivation was instantly crippled by this woman, he understood that no one in the 10,000 worlds could save him. Because Gu He was at the peak of the conferred God realm. Although Gu He was the great clan elder of the ancient world sect, he rarely showed his face. Many people did not know his cultivation. They only knew that he was at the peak of the conferred God realm, but they did not know that he was already at the peak of the conferred God realm, only below Gu Xian. But this woman was able to kill Gu He in one move. It could be seen that she was no longer at the peak of the conferred God realm. Ancestor? She was the ancestor? An extremely terrifying thought surged in Gumo's mind. Impossible! If she was the ancestor, why didn't the expert in charge of the Great Stone Tablet competition have any reaction? And why did the almighty expert turn a blind eye to this woman, causing trouble here? Gumo's entire body trembled. He felt that his mind was in a mess. Could it be that this woman and the ancestor knew each other? He looked towards the top of the gold sacred city. There stood a resplendent figure, but at the moment the figure was not paying attention to him, but was staring at the gold sacred city. Maybe he did not even know what was happening here. That's right. This woman was proficient in spatial energy. She sealed the space here, so that the ancestor could not sense her. Daring to act recklessly in front of the ancestor was a taboo. This woman should know that, but she was able to hide from the ancestor's attention. I'm afraid that her strength, Gu Mo's mind, was in a mess. But there was not much time left. It was not enough for him to continue thinking, because the power of space had already pressed down on him. The immortals seemed to have forgotten about the intense battle in the gold sacred city. Most of them looked over, and only regained their senses when they saw the power of space compressing Gu Mo and the rest into sand. Gu Mo, Yin and the rest immediately died, as if she had done something insignificant. She turned her gaze and continued to pay attention to the battle in the sacred city. As for Gu He, who was lying on the ground, struggling at death's door, she did not even look at him. Everyone felt guilty. This woman. Who exactly was she? So terrifying? Go and investigate. There were already almighty beings secretly investigating Su Qing, but she did not care at all. At that moment, Gu Exine and the rest in the Gold Sacred City were watching a group of almighty beings fight the guardian statue outside the palace. Suddenly, his face changed, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. "Sect leader, what's wrong?" someone asked anxiously. But Gu Exine was silent for a moment. Then suddenly, tears flowed down his face. His face was filled with sorrow. "Sect leader, what's going on?" Everyone was confused. "Emoer is dead," Gu Exine shouted in pain. "What?" Everyone was shocked. Why would such a thing happen out of nowhere? Everyone was shocked. Guillermo was not here. How did Gu Exine know? "He left a strand of soul energy in my heart." This strand of soul energy fluctuated violently and shook my mind, causing me to be injured. Then this strand of soul energy completely lost its connection with Mo-er. From this, it can be seen that Mo-er's soul has disappeared. Gu Exine's voice became weak. "How can this be? Who dares to touch my Gushur sect? Sect leader, what should we do now?" "Continue to participate. After the large competition, we will investigate carefully. No matter who it is, I will definitely find him and take revenge for my son." Gu Exine gritted his teeth. He stared at the palace and said solemnly, "No matter the cost, help me obtain the inheritance of the palace." Yes, everyone was filled with righteous indignation. They were filled with resentment and fighting spirit. At that moment, on Su Yun's side, he was still fighting with Sword Master Xing Chun and Sword Master Ho Yang. But the three of them were not so relaxed, because the guardian statue of the palace had come to life and treated the three of them as challengers and started to attack. The one who created the guardian statue was most likely the ancestor almighty being, because the power of the guardian was the power of the small world, although it was a very low-quality small world and could collapse at any time, unable to evolve into a civilization. But even if it was a desolate small world, the ancestor power it produced was extremely terrifying. And the strongest part of the guardian statue was not its ancestor power, but the 13,000 fine array formations that covered its entire body. These array formations were especially terrifying. Their surface area was even smaller than a grain of rice. They were like hair, covering the entire body of the guardian statue. And when the statue woke up, they were activated at the same time. Not many of these array formations were offensive array formations. On the contrary, most of them were defensive array formations, increasing the toughness of the body, reflecting immortal techniques, quickly healing the damaged body, etc. There were more than 10,000 of them, all added onto the body of the guardian statue, causing its body to reach an indescribably terrifying level. Swordmaster Ho Yang and Swordmaster Xing Chen originally wanted to restrain the guardian statue and then kill Su Yun, but who would have thought that after a few moves, the statue would not be damaged at all? The attack of a peak God realm existence seemed to be completely ignored. Chapter 1509. If we want to destroy this guard, we must first destroy the array formation on it. Swordmaster Ho's eyes flashed with a sharp light as he shouted at Star Sage. "That's not difficult. My star constellation art is extremely powerful. It's like 1,000,000 stars attacking. It's perfect to deal with these array formations, but I need time to activate it." Star Sage shouted. "I'll protect you." Swordmaster Ho shouted. "Help me restrain this guy. Don't let him escape. As for this statue, my Star Pavilion's experts will hold it back." "Swordmaster, give me some time. I'll destroy this man and the statue together." The stellar venerable roared, then began to perform hand seals to activate the technique. The power of creation in his body began to surge like surging water, and stars began to form around him. They were mysterious, exquisite, and beautiful. The stars in the sky twinkled as if they had already formed a link with him. As his arms continued to move, the stars also twinkled as if they were completely under his control. At this time, a strange scene appeared again. In the sky, the images of the azure dragon, white tiger, vermilion bird, and black tortoise appeared. Then, the power of creation around Star Sage gradually changed. It became more and more terrifying. It was as if the end of the world was gradually born. "Very good. Sensing the change in the star sage, the sword lord's eyes flashed with a strange light. He held onto a sword that was as dazzling as the sun and slashed at Su Yun crazily. His attacks were extremely fierce, not giving him any chance to catch his breath. If this continued, the array formation on the guard would be destroyed. After getting rid of the guard, Su Yun would definitely not be able to defend against the attacks of the two. In the end, he would die. This time, I'm going to have a huge harvest. Swordmaster Ho stared at the heavenly sword in Su Yun's hand. The greed in his eyes could no longer be hidden. Su Yun raised his sword and counterattacked. He did not have any intention of taking the initiative to attack. He kept retreating. The sword in his hand danced quickly. However, he only blocked Swordmaster Ho's sword. He did not make any unnecessary movements. He did not even use much strength. Swordmaster Ho attacked crazily. But very quickly, he realized something was wrong. He raised his head to look at Su Yun. He saw that Su Yun's face was calm. It did not seem like he was being forced. On the contrary, the calmness in his eyes and body made Swordmaster Ho feel uneasy. You haven't used your full strength? Hoyang Swordmaster said coldly. Of course. Su Yun did not hide it. Bastard. Swordmaster Hoyang felt greatly humiliated. The attacks became more and more frenzied. Sword shadows danced like blazing suns, causing people to be unable to open their eyes. Terrifying waves of heat also began to rise, as if they wanted to melt everything in the surroundings. The strength of the Queen Yang sword did not lie in its sharpness, nor did it lie in its speed. Instead, it lay in the concept of the sword, the vast might of the sword that illuminated the world. The Hoyang sword master pushed this great momentum to its limits. At this moment, everything in the world seemed to slow down. No matter who it was, no matter what action they took, no matter what word they said, even a single breath became difficult. He had already taken control of the situation here. In this place, even gods would be suppressed by him. Sun-devouring sword art. Hoyang sword master raised his sword high and slashed down. The 10,000 zhang light aura swallowed the sun and moon, slashing toward Su Yun. Su Yun's eyes turned cold. He raised the heavenly will sword and blocked the incoming sword. The terrifying swords clashed with each other, releasing an endless amount of destructive power, causing both of them to tremble. After all, the sword master was at the peak of the god realm. His destructive power was immeasurable. Although Su Yun was at the pseudo-ancestor realm, he could not ignore his destructive power. However, this move could only slightly shake Su Yun. It was impossible to defeat him. After all, Su Yun's chi was completely different from theirs. Even if it was the power of creation, it was mixed with some ancestor's power. His chi had undergone a qualitative change and was not something that ordinary power could contend against. It's another move of mine. Swordmaster Ho Yang's palm congealed. The great momentum moved along with his power of creation, as if he wanted to open up a new world. Su Yun frowned. Swordmaster Ho Yang was using his full strength. However, he did not block anymore. Instead, he stood where he was and watched Swordmaster Ho Yang make his move. Swordmaster Ho Yang's face changed. He did not understand what Su Yun was doing. However, in the next second, a terrifying star power suddenly exploded behind him. Swordmaster Ho Yang's heart skipped a beat. Has the stellar venerable finished casting his spell? But why was it so terrifying? And he could sense it so clearly, as if it was right behind him. Behind him, the Hoyang sword sovereign's soul suddenly trembled, and he spun around. But in that instant, a terrifying astral energy slammed into him, like a gigantic net that blotted out the sky. There was no way for him to escape. Such a terrifying technique completely shocked everyone in the surroundings. What sort of existence could unleash such a terrifying technique? Bang! Hoyang sword master's body exploded violently. The terrifying destructive power wrapped around him tightly like a cocoon, ravaging his body in a frenzy. When the terrifying energy of the stars gradually dispersed, Hoyang sword master's entire body was in tatters. All the magic treasures on his body had been destroyed, his physical body was in tatters, and his aura was in a mess. He was in an extremely miserable state. One move was enough to make an ascended god realm expert so miserable. It was enough to show how terrifying this move was. However, this power was not only targeted at Swordmaster Ho Yang, but also at Su Yun. Another wave of power shot towards Su Yun. However, Su Yun seemed to be prepared. The heavenly will sword in his hand slowly spun, releasing a concept. The profound power twisted in the air, absorbing the power, transforming it into willpower and returning it to the sword. The power of induction. Seeing this, the Star Sage's face turned ugly. This was the power of profound meaning. It was able to use one's concept and aura to forcefully absorb the opponent's power. It was extremely terrifying. An existence of this level had already covered most of the power, including the opponent's power. Su Yun swept his gaze over the Star Sage and the others. The attack just now was naturally executed by the Star Sage. It was true that he wanted to get rid of Su Yun and the guard statue, but he also wanted to get rid of Swordmaster Ho Yang, because there was only one palace. If he defeated Su Yun and the guard, who would it belong to? Although there were more than 50 palaces, if he took the opportunity to kill Swordmaster Ho Yang, wouldn't he, the Star Sage, have one less strong opponent to deal with in the competition later? The goal of the competition in the Gold Holy City was to eliminate opponents. It would be more beneficial for him to eliminate opponents who posed a threat. Venerable One, what are you doing? Swordmaster Ho Yang lay weakly on the ground, glaring at the Star Sage. What am I doing? Can't you tell? The Star Sage said indifferently. He activated his technique, and the array formation on the guard statue was destroyed. It was no longer invincible, and the people from the Star Pavilion were enough to deal with it. Although he did not kill the Ho Yang Swordmaster, he was already heavily injured and was no longer a match for the Xingqian Lord. The Xingqian Lord was satisfied, but when his gaze landed on Su Yun, it made the Xingqian Lord's face turn ugly. This person was still calm. Could it be that he was not injured? Damn it! Swordmaster Ho Yang's people rushed forward, wanting to attack the Star Pavilion and take revenge for Swordmaster Ho Yang. But they were stopped by Swordmaster Ho Yang. Let's go. Swordmaster Ho Yang stood up with difficulty and planned to leave. But just as he moved, his head was chopped off by a terrifying sword, and his soul was pulled out. Everyone was startled. They looked over, only to see Su Yun holding onto his sword, and, unknowingly, he was standing in front of the Ho Yang Sword Lord. He kept the Ho Yang Sword Lord's soul, and stuffed the Ho Yang sword into his own space bag. Everything was so natural, smooth like flowing water in his eyes. Everything was as though it was a matter of course. Swordmaster Ho Yang died, just like that. Everyone was in disbelief. Bastard! All of them rushed forward and fought with Su Yun, but in the next second, the terrifying sword images engulfed them. Since you chose to be my enemy, you should be prepared to lose your life. Su Yun casually waved his hand, and the sword images attacked. Everywhere it passed, there was no life. What a ferocious method. The Star Sage's scalp went numb. He carefully sized up Su Yun and realized that his move just now did not affect Su Yun at all. He had completely received the attack. How is that possible? You're next. Su Yun held onto the heavenly will sword and walked towards the people of the Star Pavilion. Originally, if you and Swordmaster Ho Yang joined hands, you would be able to contend with me, but you coveted the inheritance in the palace and believed too much in your own strength, so you impatiently took action against Swordmaster Ho Yang, causing you to lose your only ally. Now that you're the only one left, how can you fight against me? Su Yun's voice became colder, and the killing intent in his eyes became heavier and heavier. From the moment the Star Sage saw him, he had been speaking ill of him, and had revealed killing intent several times. Towards this person, Su Yun would not show any mercy. You think I can't defeat you? You're wrong. The Star Sage roared, and once again gathered his strength, instigating the power of creation to attack Su Yun. The people of the Star Pavilion rushed forward together. Su Yun was not courteous. He immediately activated the ancestral power, and the terrifying chi enveloped the entire palace. In the blink of an eye, the Star Sage felt that the power of creation in his body was completely sealed. Do you know why I dare to challenge you, and why I dare to not put you in my eyes? Su-Yun leaped into the air and looked down at the Star Sage and said in a low voice, "That's because you and I are on completely different levels. You are only at the peak of the God realm, and I have already surpassed this stage. Now let me show you my power." He raised his sword, and the power on it seemed to encompass the entire universe. The power of the ancestor. The Star Sage was completely dumbfounded. Chapter 15:10. The terrifying power of the ancestor was not something that the power of creation could contend against. Even though the level of civilization of the small world in Su-Yun's body was not high, it was still able to firmly suppress the power of creation of the Star Sage, making it difficult for him to resist. At this moment, the Star Venerable finally understood what kind of terrifying existence he was facing. "Ancestor? You are the ancestor?" he shouted in a trembling voice. "Not yet." Su-Yun said in answer that the Star Sage did not understand at all, and then a terrifying power crushed towards the people of the Star Pavilion, causing everyone to be crushed, unable to resist at all. When they felt such a powerful and unstoppable power, they had already lost their fighting spirit, and it was extremely easy to defeat those who had lost their fighting spirit. After the people of the Star Pavilion were killed, Su-Yun immediately headed towards the palace. The guards of the palace were also taken care of by the Star Pavilion, which was equivalent to him picking up a ready-made inheritance. There were many immortals around the palace peeping over, but seeing that Su-Yun had easily killed the Star Sage, no one dared to have any ideas on him. Even if there were great immortals peeping, they did not dare to go forward. The palace was filled with gold and jade, but it seemed very empty. The entire palace in the Gold Sacred City was just a place for the supreme expert to place his inheritance, so the layout was naturally very simple and crude. In the center of the empty hall was a huge statue, but the person who placed the statue was most likely the ancestor. Of course, there were also some who were about to step into the ancestor realm, and as for whether or not they could obtain the inheritance of an ancestor, it would depend on their luck. Su-Yun stared at the statue and was rather disappointed. What he had obtained was only the inheritance of an ordinary person at the peak of the God realm, which was nothing much. However, it did not matter. His final goal was the stone tablet, and these inheritances were not his main goal. Although it would be of great benefit to other immortals, to him, the effect would not be obvious. He broke open the statue, and the power within the statue slowly leaked out. He sat down cross-legged and felt the power, gradually absorbing and comprehending it. The intense battles in the Gold Sacred City were also gradually reaching a climax. Almost all the existences below the God realm were eliminated, and occasionally, a few lucky ones would barely be able to obtain the inheritance. The Dao Shi Great Emperor relied on his terrifying cultivation and blade techniques to obtain the inheritance of an expert at the peak of the God realm. As for Ancestor Hao, he had also obtained the inheritance of a peak ascended God realm expert. Even now, he didn't know if this Gold Sacred City had the Ancestor's inheritance, and if so, how many were there. The number of people in the Golden Sacred City decreased sharply. When all 50 palaces were occupied, not even 1/5 of the people who entered the city survived. Many people died in the battle, especially the elders and elite disciples of the sections. These people usually fought with others or the guardian statues for the benefit of the sections. They went in and out of dangerous places, while the leaders of the sects sat back and enjoyed the fruits of their labor, conserving their strength to deal with the battles that would follow. This was the law of the jungle, the weak seeking food for the strong. All right, the first round of the stone tablet competition has ended. Now, I'll help all of you recover your strength and physical body so that you'll be in your best condition for the second round. The eternal knight primogenitor who was above the Gold Sacred City spoke. His godlike voice sounded out, causing everyone to feel the urge to worship him. He raised both of his hands up high and released a burst of mysterious intent. The power of the spirit chi fell down like rain, sprinkling onto the sacred city below, The people in the sacred city received the grace, their damaged bodies healed at a speed visible to the naked eye, their lost strength also quickly recovered. It was like a miracle. This was the gift of the ancestor. It was not only recovery. People could even comprehend something from this power. The benefits were countless. The people watching from the outside revealed envious expressions. If they had known earlier, they would have entered the sacred city to experience it. At most, they would have hidden and waited until the end. But it was a pity that they no longer had the chance. The eternal night, Primogenitor, waited for a long time before keeping the gold sacred city. The sacred city disappeared, and the 50 people who entered the second round appeared in the center region. The remaining 50 people were all great immortals, and many of them were the leaders of their sections. They either had powerful methods or were famous, and their methods were extraordinary. There were only a few nameless people, and they gave off an unfathomable feeling. The sacred city disappeared, and everyone looked at each other, their battle intent rising. However, Su Yin was still sitting cross-legged, as though he was comprehending something. Everyone's attention was on the large competition and the ancestor, so who would pay attention to him? The scale of the second round of the competition will not be as big as the first round, but there will also be a portion of the eliminations. Only 10 will be able to enter the third round, and those who enter the third round will all become my disciples in name, and will be able to receive some of my teachings. The eternal night, Primogenitor, said indifferently, but this sentence completely ignited the entire audience. The 50 immortals who had advanced were all trembling with excitement. To be able to take the ancestor as his master was a rare opportunity in his life. The ancestor's explanation was of great help to them in breaking through and entering the primogenitor realm. No matter what, they had to enter the third round. Everyone thought in their hearts. However, Su Yin was not interested in this. If the primogenitor realm could really be entered just by relying on a few words of explanation from an ancestor, then the number of ancestor-s in the entire universe would not be so few. There were so many great demons in the true devil realm. Why didn't the devil saint guide them one by one and help them step through? In the end, it still required one's own comprehension and feelings. The power on the ancient stone tablet was a good guide, and the ancestors' people could at most give them the correct direction of cultivation, but they could not control their advancement. The second round of the large competition did not allow these immortals to fight head-on, so the eternal night Primogenitor once again soared into the sky. With a wave of his hand, a gigantic floating island appeared above the ancient ruins. The island was surrounded by mountains and jagged rocks. From afar, it looked extremely desolate, but if one got closer, they would be able to smell a different aura. Was it created by the eternal night, Primogenitor? No, this island seems to have always existed. There's a faint sealing power around it. I am proficient in sealing techniques, so you guys can't sense it, but I can smell it. This floating island has always been in a sealed state. Sealed? The crowd was completely confused. Could it be that this island had always been in the hands of the eternal night, Primogenitor? Was this just a magic treasure of the eternal night, Primogenitor? Eternal night, Primogenitor, glanced at the people around him and said calmly, "You don't have to be surprised. This floating island is not my artifact, nor is it formed from my power. It is a true floating island. It was originally a part of this ancient relic." A part of the ancient ruins? The crowd was in an uproar. I purposely separated this floating island from the ancient ruins 50,000 years ago and used it as the venue for the large competition. According to what I know, there are many corpses of ancient people buried on this floating island. After the passage of time, the corpses of these ancient people have probably mutated. If they are strong enough, they should have already condensed an ancient divine fruit. After consuming it, your lifespan will be increased by 10 times, giving you more time to pursue the ancestors' realm. Now, I will be observing here. If 10 people obtain an ancient divine fruit before the competition ends, the large competition will end early, and the rest will be eliminated. Do you understand? The eternal night Primogenitor's words caused countless people to be envious and excited. A fruit that could increase lifespan by 10 times. What kind of heaven-defying divine item was that? Countless great immortals could not reach the ancestors' realm and died. One of the reasons was their lifespan. If they could obtain this item, the hope of stepping into the ancestors' realm in the future would increase greatly. Something that they could not achieve in their lifetime. Could it not be achieved with 10 lifetimes? I will definitely find the divine fruit. One of the immortals swore solemnly. Wine King Pavilion's Shing took a deep breath. He cupped his fists towards Eternal Night Primogenitor and said with a smile, Senior Eternal Night, I wonder if you can allow me to find a fruit to brew wine after this ends? I will gift it to you. Shing really knew how to use this opportunity to curry favor. With the Wine King Pavilion's top-notch brewing technique and this precious divine fruit, who knows what kind of divine wine would be brewed? The Eternal Night Primogenitor did not stand on ceremony. He nodded faintly and did not say anything. However, even such a simple action was enough to make Shing ecstatic. To be acknowledged by the primogenitor, it was a great honor. The others looked at Shing with envy and jealousy. However, with the Eternal Night Primogenitor here, they did not dare to be impudent. All right, these are the rules. It's very simple. You can use any methods, as long as you can obtain the divine fruit, and persist until there are 10 people who have obtained the divine fruit. You can enter the third round, which is also the final round. Next, it will depend on your own methods. Enter the island. The Eternal Night Primogenitor shouted. He waved his hand, and a ray of light blossomed around the island. It was a light screen that sealed the floating island. Outsiders could not enter, only leaving a gap for the participants to enter. People scrambled to get inside. Suyin was not in a hurry. After hearing the commotion, he opened his eyes and swept his gaze across the floating island. He took a deep breath and walked in. On the other side, the people from the ancient Heaven Gods Council were staring at him, especially Lung Shinru and Happy Drunk. Is it him, miss? Happy Drunk looked at Lung Shinru respectfully and smiled. Kill him. I don't want to see him in the third round, Lung Shinru said coldly. Don't worry. Only the people from the ancient Heaven Gods Council will appear in the third round. When the time comes, we will take the initiative to give up our spots and give the two comprehension rights to Miss You. We will help Miss You successfully ascend to the primogenitor realm. Everything is under our control. Happy Drunk said with a smile and led his men into the room. Lung Shinru stared at Happy Drunk for a moment, then followed. The floating island was not big. It was not difficult to hide 50 people. However, among these 50 people, not everyone wanted to obtain the fruit and successfully ascend. The Eternal Night Primogenitor had already said that any method could be used here, including killing. Chapter 15:11. After entering the floating island, Su Yun quietly walked forward. He could feel that there were a few auras nearby, and the other party seemed to have sensed his existence, but they did not come close. Instead, they walked around and explored the terrain, searching for a place where the primordial divine fruit might appear. Since this was the burial ground of the ancient supreme expert, there must be more than one corpse here. Su Yun walked around, activating his chi to carefully sense his surroundings. Very quickly, he caught a hint of decay and followed this feeling forward. Not long later, he saw a withered hole. Could it be that there was something inside? Su Yun looked at the withered hole for a moment and realized that it was pitch black inside, straight into the abdomen of the floating island. Su Yun thought for a moment, then walked inside, but the moment he stepped into the cave suddenly closed with an AO sound, swallowing him whole. It turned out that this hole was an illusion. It was actually the mouth of a fierce beast. Evil Miss Tiger. The famous beast of the immortal world had terrifying battle prowess and was the king of all beasts. To be able to obtain this beast, a strong cultivation was the prerequisite, and it also required a great opportunity. What a foolish person. You actually fell for it so easily. Do you really think you're that lucky? You can find the divine fruit the moment you enter the island? Idiot, that rotten aura was deliberately emitted by me. My goal was to make you discover the hole formed by my angry tiger, so that I could easily devour you." An immortal walked over from the side and laughed loudly as he looked at the tiger's mouth. So it turned out that all of this was a trap. In fact, many immortals had already made plans before entering the floating island. They had even set their eyes on some people as prey. For many people, entering the floating island was not their only goal. "Do I know you?" Su-Yun's voice came out from the tiger's mouth. The immortal was slightly taken aback. He stared at the tiger and shouted, "Why haven't you swallowed him yet?" However, the tiger did not move at all. A moment later, it opened its mouth and spat out the person inside. "I can't swallow him," the tiger panted heavily and said. "His skin and flesh are too hard to chew, and his strength is too strong. I'm not his match. This person's cultivation is so terrifying. Could it be a great immortal?" The immortal said with a serious expression. He had originally planned to kill people and steal their treasures to get rid of some of his competitors, but he did not expect that the first person he met would be Su-Yun. Su-Yun stood up from the ground, activated his chi to remove the filth and sticky substance on his body, then stared at the immortal and continued. "I'll ask you again, do you and I know each other?" "I don't know him, but so what?" That person snorted. "You don't know me, yet you still want to harm me?" Su-Yun suddenly raised his hand and grabbed towards the man. The small world was instantly activated, and the ancestral power instantly enveloped the man's body. The man anxiously used the power of creation to defend, but in that split second, the power of creation in his body was suppressed, and he was unable to activate it at all. He was immediately sucked in and was tightly grabbed by Su-Yun. How could this be? He struggled crazily and looked at Su-Yun in fear. He could feel that the other party's strength was completely different from his own, and it was also incomparably strong. Could this be the primogenitor's power? Beside him, Misty Fury Tiger was so frightened that it lay on the ground, trembling like a frightened kitten. "Die!" Su-Yun's face was sinister. Without the slightest bit of mercy, he exerted strength in his palm and crushed the man. After keeping his space bag and soul, Su-Yun clapped his hands, turned his head and stared at Misty Fury Tiger, and said, "Mid-stage of the God-sealed realm, follow me. I won't kill you." Misty Fury Tiger is willing to follow Master forever and be loyal to Master. Misty Fury Tiger anxiously shouted. A spirit beast of its level was already like a human. Su-Yun's display of strength was so terrifying. How could it not know its place? Su-Yun nodded and dripped a drop of blood on its forehead, establishing a contract with it and becoming its master. In this way, he could easily suppress Misty Fury Tiger. "Continue to search for the divine fruit," Su-Yun said indifferently. "Yes." Misty Fury Tiger's huge tiger head drooped down and carefully walked forward. Su-Yun also slowly walked forward. In truth, with his strength, it was not difficult to get rid of the people on the floating island. Even if he could not kill them all, at least killing half of them would not take much effort. This way, he could easily enter the third round, and the third round would be much easier. But he did not plan to do that. Everyone had the right to cultivate and the right to live. Since they were standing here, they should work hard to fight for it. Since they were strong, why not obtain the right to comprehend it step by step? A person with true strength should be confident in himself and believe that he could obtain what he wanted. Chirp! Just then, above the floating island, below the eternal night primogenitor, a bright red dot appeared. Everyone inside and outside the island looked over and revealed astonished expressions. The appearance of the red meant that someone had already devoured the divine fruit. Such speed, to actually obtain the divine fruit so quickly. However, devouring the divine fruit did not mean that it was safe. If someone killed the person, obtained his soul, and devoured it, it would also count as a spot to enter the third round. Furthermore, the appearance of the red dot exposed that person's target. As expected, the few chi around Su-Yun immediately rushed towards the red dot without any hesitation. Su-Yun thought for a while, then also ran towards the red dot. If they were all attracted by the red dot, then they should be able to find the great Emperor Dao, Shi, and Ancestor Hao. Very quickly, Su-Yun approached the red dot, but the moment It was already a mess of battle. The immortals were fighting crazily. All sorts of strange and dazzling techniques bombarded the floating island. The destructive waves were like sickles that cut through the surrounding rocks. Suyin looked over and frowned. The situation at the scene was extremely complicated. The immortals that were rushing over did not take the initiative to join the battle, but chose to watch from the side. Because at this moment, another group of people were fighting with the person who had devoured the divine fruit. This group of people were from the Eternal God Council. Happy Drunk and Lung Shinru did not join the battle. Instead, they allowed the remaining experts of the ancient Celestial Gods Council to fight with that person. That person was alone and wielded a tyrannical blade. His blade aura was like a tiger's, and it was extremely imposing. Every slash seemed to carry with it the power of heaven and earth. If one was struck by the blade, their body would definitely shatter and they would die under the blade. This blade technique, so exquisite. I think I've seen it somewhere before. The surrounding people could not help but exclaim. But no one recognized that this blade technique came from the blade domain, because the great Emperor Daoshi had deliberately held back. He did not dare to reveal his identity as a member of the blade domain. So his blade technique was also very restrained. Otherwise, how could the Eternal God Council's middle stage Ascended God Realm people be his match? It seems like there are more people here. Happy Drunk looked around and smiled. You go, finish the battle quickly. After that, we will proceed to the next step. Lung Shinru said coldly. Happy Drunk nodded and immediately rushed forward to join the battle. Happy Drunk's strength was not simple. His unfettered astral projection was extremely terrifying. Even the great Emperor Daoshi would not be able to gain an advantage. If Happy Drunk joined in, the great Emperor Daoshi would definitely lose. Ancestor Hao seemed to have not arrived yet, and no one knew where he was. Su Yun sighed. It seemed like the conflict with the Eternal God Council would end here. He walked over, pulled out the Heavenly Will sword, and slashed at a member of the primordial Heavenly Gods Council. Without any warning, the terrifying power instantly destroyed that person's vein of fortune, killing him. His life force faded away. Seeing this person appear, the surrounding immortals all felt their hearts skip a beat. Who was this person? He actually dared to touch someone from the Eternal God Council. They thought that this person also wanted to snatch the God fruit. It's this kid. Among the people from the Eternal God Council, someone recognized Su Yun. It was the person who provoked them before the competition. Since he's here, then let him stay as well. It saves us the trouble of looking for him. Lung Shinru said coldly. Everyone, attack together and eliminate him. With that, she took the lead and rushed towards Su Yun. This person had to die because he had offended the Eternal God Council. Lung Shinru pulled out a gray sword and stabbed towards Su Yun. The sword was covered in terrifying runes. It looked densely packed. It was extremely terrifying, especially the profound energy sealed on top. It was so dense that it was suffocating. Oh, it's this kind of sword again. The power on your sword is strong enough, but it's a power given to you by someone else. The true power of a sword should be the power exerted by the swordsman and the sword together. Why don't you understand this? Su Yin stared at Lung Shinru, who was rushing over, and suddenly spoke. Lung Shinru was startled. She immediately understood who the person in front of her was, and roared angrily. You are Su Yin? Daoshi, Heavenly Emperor. No need to suppress your strength. Kill. Kill these people. Don't leave a single one alive. Su Yin bellowed. At this point, there was no need to hide anything. When the surrounding immortals heard Lung Shinru's words, their scalps went numb. Su Yin? Could this person be Su Yin? Su Yin actually came to participate in the Great Stone Tablet competition. Isn't he a devil cultivator? Why is he here? We must inform Lord Eternal Night. The surrounding immortals panicked. Some of them wanted to retreat and inform Eternal Night Primogena. After all, the Stone Tablet comprehension was targeted at the people of the immortal world. It was only open to immortals. People from other realms would not be allowed to participate, especially the sworn enemy of the immortal world, the true devil realm. But just as these immortals left, they were pounced on by a demonic fog tiger that rushed out and bit them to death, devouring their life force. Su Yun snorted. with one hand holding onto the heavenly will sword. The other directly pulled out the Heaven Destroyer sword. Both swords attacked, slashing towards Lung Shinru. The terrifying sword might struck Lung Shinru's will, causing her face to turn pale white. Previously, she had suffered a crushing defeat against Su Yun, which had already left a shadow in her heart. And now that she was facing Su Yun again, she felt that her fighting spirit was about to disappear. Chapter 15:12. The previous battle had caused her to have an irresistible shadow over Su Yun. Facing this person, she could not muster up much fighting spirit. Not because Su Yun's methods were terrifying, but because of his words, which directly hit her soft spot. She possessed the power of a pseudo-primogenitor, and her body had been constructed by a primogenitor. She possessed a small world and could produce the power of civilization. However, this was not something that she had advanced step by step. Even the conferred God realm, origin deity realm, and spirit profound realm were the same. Lung Shinru's cultivation time was very short, and could even be said to be astonishing. The main reason was that she had a master in the primogenitor realm as her backing. With the help of a primogenitor, even a person with poor talent could be forcefully pulled to a height that ordinary people did not dare to imagine. In the matter of cultivation, talent was indeed important, but talent could not decide everything. A good guide could also have a decisive effect. At least, on the path of cultivation, one would not take the wrong path, and could even continuously use shortcuts to reach higher and stronger realms. Lung Shinru was currently like that. She was the same as Su Yun. They had both entered the pseudo-primogenitor realm from the conferred God realm through the method of a primogenitor expert. However, primogenitors could only reconstruct a small world, which was to plant a seed for them. As for how the seed would grow, it depended on their own efforts. After all, the strength of small world depended on one's own development. Lung Shinru was already afraid to fight. Su Yun's sword slashed out, and she raised her sword to block. However, she had lost the sharpness from before, and her strength was weak. She was directly sent flying. "Young miss," the people of the Eternal Heaven God's Council cried out anxiously. "Do you still have the time to care about others?" Su Yun snorted coldly. Raising both swords, he slashed forward. Sword intent accompanied the wind of destruction, engulfing the people of the Eternal Heaven God's Council. He did not hold back in the slightest, and immediately activated the small world, fiercely slashing forward. He would not let a single person of the Eternal Heaven God's Council go. "Kill him." Su Yun forced his way over. The people of the Eternal Heaven God's Council were all enraged. Their arrogance was ruthlessly trampled on. How could they endure it? All of them turned around and surrounded Su Yun. "Everyone, let's work together and seal his aura. I'll kill him." The ruthless ancient god realm roared and took the lead to rush towards Su Yun. The others all activated the power of creation and rushed towards him with the intention of locking his chi. But how could the power of creation look down on the power of the ancestors? Su Yun secretly snorted. The ancestral power leaked out. Like a sharp blade, it completely tore apart the power of creation that surrounded him. "Not good." The surrounding ancient heavenly deities exclaimed in shock. But in the next second, a terrifying sword energy rushed out and slashed towards these people. They had no time to defend themselves and were hit by the sword energy. Their bodies collapsed. In an instant, four ascendant gods died tragically. When the ruthless ancient heavenly deity saw this, he was scared out of his wits. He immediately turned and prepared to flee, but before he could move, a sword light pierced through his heart. Still thinking of escaping, Su Yun did not hesitate to shatter all of their bodies and wantonly restrain their souls. His methods were extremely vicious and vicious. Seeing that, Lung Xianru was completely scared out of her wits. In her panic, she anxiously used her finger to crush a ring on her finger. This ring was bestowed to her by her master, and if she encountered an extremely dangerous moment, she could crush this ring, allowing her to forcefully calm her mind, and, at the same time, restore herself to her peak condition. The ring shattered, and Lung Xanru's entire body was wrapped in a blue light. Seeing that, the Dao Shi Great Emperor and Su Yun immediately rushed over. However, after using the magic treasure, Lung Xanru was no longer as afraid as before. Her state of mind had calmed down and was abnormally clear. The small world in her body had also stabilized, and at this moment, she possessed the strength of a pseudo-ancestor. She believed that her master also understood that if her strength increased too quickly, it would cause her state of mind to be unable to keep up, which was why she created such a magic treasure. Crash! The ancestor's chi pressed over, causing the Dao Shi Great Emperor's face to change. Seeing that the situation was not right, he immediately retreated. Master, you don't need to go forward. I'll deal with this person. You go and take care of the people around. Su Yun said. All right. The Dao Shi Great Emperor nodded, and together with the Wu Xian Nu Tiger, they rushed towards the surrounding immortals. They knew of Su Yun's identity and planned to report to the Eternal Night Primogenitor, so naturally, Su Yun could not let these people go. The Eternal Night Primogenitor was extremely disgusted with the Devil Cultivator. If he knew that Su Yun had come here, he would definitely kill him. As a great immortal, there was no need to doubt Dao Shi Great Emperor's strength. With the help of the Wu Xian Nu Tiger, none of the immortals managed to escape and were all killed. The Dao Shi Great Emperor was not lenient. Since these fellows had come here, they naturally wanted to snatch his divine fruit. So why would he let them go? After being destroyed, only Lung Xanru was left, but Lung Xanru did not plan to escape. She looked at Su Yun coldly. The aura around her body was completely different from before. It's time to let you know how big the gap between us is. Lung Xanru said coldly. She took out a palm-sized talisman paper and threw it at Su Yun. Su Yun frowned. He did not dare to attack rashly, but the talisman paper suddenly exploded, transforming into billions of pieces, forming 9 heaven-sealing chains in the air, directly blocking the sky. The entire floating island seemed to be sealed by the chains. Seeing that, the immortals below all cried out in alarm. What a powerful force! This doesn't seem to be the power of creation. Who is using this magic treasure? This kind of treasure, it would be great to use it in the 3rd round of the competition. Why is it being used now? Could it be that its owner has encountered some kind of danger that he is unable to deal with? The spectators outside all started to guess. Such a scene caused their hearts to palpitate. Eternal Night Primogenitor frowned even more. The power of the ancestor? The heaven-sealing chains actually contained the power of the ancestor. From this, it could be seen that it was a treasure made by the ancestor. Su Yun's ancestor's chi was not considered dense, but the magic treasure sealed pure ancestor's power, completely suppressing it. Even if it was not Lung Xanru's power, it was still used by Lung Xanru. Su Yun's forward speed slowed down, his breathing became hurried, and just then, the few heaven-sealing chains flew over, directly wrapping around him. Su Yun raised his sword and slashed, but the chain was extremely hard. When the Heaven Destroyer sword struck it, it only left behind a deep sword mark, but was unable to break it. The other chains took advantage of the situation and tightly bound Su Yun's 2 swords and body. Master, the Dao Shi Great Emperor shouted anxiously. Don't worry, don't interfere. You won't be able to resist a battle of this level. Su Yun shouted. Hearing that, the Dao Shi Great Emperor's heart trembled. At such a crucial moment, Su Yun was actually thinking about this, which meant that he cared about his own life. For a person of the ancestor to be able to do this, what other reason was there for him to not be moved? The Dao Shi Great Emperor secretly clenched his teeth. He decided to help Su Yun, but just at that moment, a burst of power suddenly pressed down on Lung Xanru, causing her to be caught off guard. She directly fell from the sky and smashed onto the ground, causing the ground to crack and the entire floating island to sink. Sword might. Moreover, it was a terrifying sword power that was released with the ancestor's power as the foundation. The entire floating island sank into a terrifying sword force, causing everyone inside and outside the floating island to tremble. At this moment, It was as if they were standing in front of a peerless divine sword, and this sword seemed to want to pierce a hole in the heavens and the 10,000 worlds. Whose power is this? Eternal Knight Primogenitor opened his eyes and paid attention to the floating island. Previously, when the contestants entered the floating island, he had always closed his eyes as if he was resting, but now he could no longer maintain his composure. However, the sword might did not last for long, because after Lung Xinru was suppressed by the sword might, she fell to the ground. The heaven-sealing chains were broken, and Su Yun took the opportunity before she could use her second magic treasure to force his way over. Lung Xinru had no choice but to pull out her gray sword to block, and the two of them began a sword technique duel in the center of the floating island. In terms of sword techniques, Su Yun was not afraid. Regardless of whether it was the limitless sword arts or the Devil Dao sword techniques, he was already familiar with them, especially the terrifying sword techniques that he had inherited from the Devil Saint. Every move focused on seizing the life force of others, but this place was not suitable for the cultivation techniques of the Devil Realm, so Su Yun could not use them. He did not even activate the limitless sword arts, and only used the divine wind sword technique that he had not used for a long time to fight against his opponent. To Su Yun, who was at this realm, the divine wind sword technique was no longer considered a strong sword technique, but with the support of his powerful cultivation, the speed of the divine wind sword technique had already been displayed to a height that he had never reached before. Lung Xinru had some achievements in the way of the sword, but it was only limited to the power of her sword techniques. In terms of the skill of the way of the sword, she was worlds apart from Su Yun, and after exchanging a few dozen moves, Lung Xinru was already at a disadvantage and found it difficult to contend against him. Retreat? This thought surfaced in Lung Xinru's mind, and without hesitation, she rushed back, wanting to escape. How could Su Yun let her escape just like that? He immediately chased after her, but this time, Lung Xinru was clearly prepared. She took out another magic treasure and threw it on the ground. It was a round black pearl. After landing on the ground, the pearl exploded, releasing a strange gas. The gas fused into the air, freezing the entire space. Su Yun felt that his movements had become extremely slow, and his speed could not keep up with Lung Xinru at all. It was another magic treasure bestowed by the ancestor. Dark Sky really valued Lung Xinru to actually bestow so many magic treasures upon her. Su Yun thought, back then, Dark Sky had even personally appeared to save Lung Xinru, who was about to be killed by him. And this time, he was even more prepared. Regardless of whether it was defending or escaping, he had given her so many magic treasures, so it was likely that in Dark Sky's heart, Lung Xinru was not just a simple disciple. If Lung Xinru wanted to escape, it would be extremely difficult for Su Yun to catch up. Helpless, he could only give up, but Su Yun was not worried that he would not be able to find Lung Xinru again, as long as she continued to participate in the large competition. Then in the third round, he would definitely be able to meet Lung Xinru again. Chapter 15:13. As a fake ancestor, Lung Xinru had to be eliminated. Otherwise, she would be a threat to the Eternal God Council in the future. Lung Xinru had escaped. The battle had ended, but none of the immortals on the floating island dared to approach this place. After all, the chi that was being emitted was too terrifying. Even a God Realm cultivator did not dare to act recklessly. Master, what should we do? That woman knows our identity. If she tells the Eternal Knight Primogenitor, I'm afraid we will be in endless trouble. The great Emperor Dao sure walked over and said in a low voice. Su Yun came here alone, without the protection of the encampment. If he was surrounded and attacked, the situation would be extremely bad. Don't worry, the Eternal Knight Primogenitor still does not know, and you and I are not real devil cultivator. We only need to disguise ourselves once more, and then we can continue to participate in the competition. Our main goal here is the stone tablet. Let's not consider anything else for now. Su Yun said in a low voice. You have obtained the divine fruit. Find a place to cultivate properly, and strive to obtain the qualifications to enter the third round of the competition. As long as you enter the third round, you will be able to obtain benefits, even if you are not fated with the stone tablet, At least eternal night will give you pointers, which will be of great help to you in breaking through to the ancestor realm. Hearing that, the great Emperor Dao Shi nodded. Then, Master, since that's the case, this subordinate will go and cultivate for now. The great Emperor Dao Shi originally wanted to help Su Yun obtain the divine fruit. But with Su Yun's strength, he did not need to worry, and obtaining the divine fruit would naturally be easy. Just as the battle ended, a few red dots appeared in the sky above the floating island. Other than the great Emperor Dao Shi, many people had also obtained the divine fruit, causing those who wanted to make a move on the great Emperor Dao Shi to hesitate. They could choose their opponents well. At least no one wanted to become enemies with someone at the peak of the God realm. Su Yun brought the misty evil tiger and continued to move forward, wandering around the floating island, searching for the whereabouts of the divine fruit. The misty evil tiger lowered its head and sniffed along the way. When the divine fruit appeared, it knew the aura of the divine fruit. If the divine fruit was produced with its sense of smell, it would naturally not be able to escape. At this moment, many battles had erupted on the floating island with the red dots as the center. There are also a few places where the divine fruit had appeared, where immortals were fighting. Misty evil angry tiger who knew the smell quickly found the location of the next divine fruit and led Su Yun to run. Not long after, a man and a tiger arrived in front of a deserted mound. The angry tiger lay on the ground, sniffed a few times, and then began to frantically dig. The mound was immediately flattened, and a large number of bones fell out. However, it did not stop and continued to dig. Soon, a blood-red fruit that grew in the middle of the corpses full of death chi fell out. It was the divine fruit. It was a miraculous fruit that was grown using the death aura and tyrannical strength of experts after they died as nutrients. Su Yun picked up the fruit and closed his eyes to feel it. His face revealed a look of surprise. What a pure power! Although it was the power of creation, it was purer than any ascendant realm expert's power of creation. It was like a natural container that stored and purified the power of creation. Besides the power of creation, there seemed to be another kind of power inside. Could it be the primogenitor's power? No, it didn't seem to be the primogenitor's power. It seemed to be a new type of magical power that had evolved from the gathering of countless large amounts of energy. Su Yun could not guess the power contained within the fruit, but that was not important. He opened his mouth and stuffed the fruit over. Stop! At this moment, a roar sounded. Su Yun's hand froze. He turned his head to look behind him, only to see a group of immortals slowly approaching him. People from the Qianyun Palace? Su Yun sized up these immortals, and his eyes narrowed. This divine fruit was discovered by our Qianyun Palace. Fellow immortal, give us some face and let us have this divine fruit. How about it? Jin Jinzi slowly walked over, his voice low and his expression serious. However, Su Yun did not say a word and directly stuffed the fruit into his mouth, almost swallowing it in one gulp. The divine fruit was not easy to find, and it was even more difficult to obtain. How could he hand it over so easily? To be able to come here, which one of them was afraid of death? When the people of the Qianyun Palace saw this, they were all extremely angry. Su Yun's action was completely looking down on them, especially Jin Jinzi, who was unable to restrain his anger. He took a few steps forward, stared coldly at Su Yun, and said, "Do you know what you have done?" "I know," Su Yun said indifferently. "And you should also know who I am, right?" Jin Jinzi asked again. "This?" Su Yun glanced at him and shook his head. "I really don't know about this." "You." Jin Jinzi's eyes were burning with anger. "How ignorant! We are from the Qianyun Palace, and this is our Qianyun Palace's Grand Sect leader, Jin Jinzi. Where did you come from? Don't you even know this?" The people next to him snorted. "Just a country bumpkin who has never seen the world. Don't blame him. After all, he has eyes but cannot see." The surrounding people of the Qianyun Palace teased. Soon, there was a burst of laughter. Su Yun did not have the time to pay attention to these people and turned to leave. But how could Jin Jinzi and the others let Su Yun go just like that? Even though Su Yun had eaten the divine fruit, it did not matter. As long as they devoured Su Yun's soul, they would still have the qualifications to enter the third round. Jin Jinzi looked up into the sky. There were already 6 divine fruits. Adding Su Yun's, it was 7. Once there were 10, then the second round of the competition would automatically end. There was not much time. He had to take measures. Even at all costs, he had to obtain the qualifications to enter the third round. Did I say you can leave? Jin Jinzi snorted coldly, waved his hand, and the people of the Qian Yun Palace immediately rushed forward. Whether I leave or not is not something you could decide. But since it is like this, then I will not leave, and use your souls to absorb this divine fruit. Su Yun's voice was cold. At this moment, he did not plan to leave. He knew that these people did not plan to let him go. Since that was the case, he did not need to be polite. Roar! The evil mist, angry tiger roared and rushed forward, its bloody mouth directly biting toward the nearest person of the Qian Palace. Its big mouth suddenly became bigger and swallowed the person whole. Not even leaving the soul, it really shocked the surrounding people. What? The people on the left and right all revealed looks of shock. This is the evil mist, angry tiger? Also, this angry tiger's cultivation is so strong. It is actually at the middle stage of the god realm. Jin Jinzi was stunned. If an angry tiger had such strength, then without a doubt, this person should be at the peak of the god realm. A person at the peak of the god realm, it was not easy to defeat a person at the peak of the god realm. Jin Jinzi's face became ugly. He was thinking about whether or not he should take the divine fruit from this person. But if he did not take this person, he was afraid that the other people, he was afraid the last 10 people, most likely all had the methods of the peak of the god realm. After all, to comprehend the stone tablet was to enter the ancestor realm. The peak of the god realm people would participate in this competition, and as the strongest existence, they would naturally advance to the end. Jin Jinzi, I did not want to cause trouble, but you came to provoke me. Don't blame me. Su Yun suddenly stepped forward, pulled out the heavenly will sword, and slashed at Jin Jinzi. That terrifying sword might seem to contain all the astonishing destructive power, sweeping over. With one sword strike, all things were destroyed. Jin Jinzi's heart was pounding, and his soul was trembling. He had never thought that this person would have such a terrifying move. In a hurry, he took out his own magical treasure, a golden bell, and used it to block the heavenly will sword. The bell grew in size and let out soul-shaking chimes, attacking the sword intent. However, the sword intent was terrifyingly sharp, and it couldn't break through easily. Scram! Su Yun suddenly roared. A sound wave shot out from the sky, crashing towards Jin Jinzi, who was caught off guard and fell to the ground. His chest was blasted open, and he spat out a large amount of blood. This sound wave was definitely not the power of creation. He looked at Su Yun with wide eyes and shouted, "Who are you?" Su Yun. Su Yun snorted. He suddenly pulled out the heaven-exterminating sword. Both swords slashed towards Jin Jinzi. Su Yun. Jin Jinzi's tongue was tied. His courage was about to break. He had heard that Su Yun was an ancestor-level existence. An ancestor was a god to the god-sealing realm. The moment these two words came out, Jin Jinzi's fighting spirit was shaken. His confidence was completely lost. He did not know how to resist. The two swords slashed down, activating the small world. Jin Jinzi shook the magic treasure bell in his hand with all his might. The bell rang, but it could not resist Su Yun's sword power. The bell was cut into pieces. The terrifying and sharp chi also instantly tore apart Jin Jinzi's body. Facing the power of the ancestor, his power of creation was like a joke, completely crushed. Jin Jinzi died, and the people from the Qian Palace were all devoured by the evil mist tiger. Su Yun kept Jin Jinzi's soul. In a space bag, there were already many expert souls sealed. He raised his head to look at the sky. The 8th divine fruit had already appeared. The second round of the competition was about to end. Then, the last round of the competition was about to begin. He sat down cross-legged and recuperated. The evil mist tiger sat by the side and waited. Jin Jinzi's broken corpse was still not far from him. A few immortals followed the traces in the sky to find him. When they saw Jin Jinzi's corpse, they all tactfully left. Even Jin Jinzi was dead. If they went up, they would only be courting death. About 4 hours later, the 9th and 10th divine fruits also appeared. Although they did not know what kind of tragic price had been paid, everyone knew that after this competition, many of those revered geniuses had fallen. When the floating island slowly dissipated, only a dozen figures appeared in the sky. Out of the 50 top genius experts of the immortal world, only a dozen or so were left. The rest had all been buried with the floating island forever. And out of these dozen or so people, only 10 people had obtained the qualifications to enter the 3rd round of the competition and compete for the right to comprehend the stone tablet. Everyone's eyes looked towards these 10 people. Chapter 15:14. Divine Lion Sect Master Divine Lion King. 7 Emotions Palace Master 7 Emotions Goddess. Rogue Immortal Zue Xiao Yao. Gushur Sect Master Gu Exent. Saint Dao Disciple. Selfless Sword Selfless Self. And there was also the Rogue Immortal Blade Artist, who had concealed his identity. The Rogue Immortal Swordsman also concealed his identity. Other than that, there was Lung Shinru. After all, she had the power of a pseudo-ancestor, so it was naturally not difficult for her to obtain a divine fruit. But the last person was out of Su Yun's expectations. It was actually Ancestor Hao. Who would have thought that he would also obtain a divine fruit? Su Yun and Dao Shi, Heavenly Emperor, left the floating island and returned to the empty space. Ancestor Hao walked over with a face full of smiles. I knew that the two of you would definitely be able to obtain the qualifications for the 3rd round. Ancestor Hao laughed. Master being able to obtain the divine fruit is naturally within my expectations. I was rather lucky to obtain Master's help, but I never thought that Master Ancestor Hao would be so powerful. I am truly impressed. Dao Shi, Heavenly Emperor, cupped his fists and said, although he did not know much about Ancestor Hao, from his words and actions, he could feel that he was also an incredible person. Hey, I'm not considered powerful. It's just that some immortals encountered a divine fruit and started fighting. I hid at the side and reaped the benefits, which was how I obtained the divine fruit. Speaking of which, I'm truly lucky. Ancestor Hao scratched his head and laughed. No matter what, being able to enter the 3rd round is a good thing. Su Yun laughed. You guys should quickly sit down and absorb the benefits of the divine fruit. Do your best to prepare for the 3rd round. The two of them nodded and immediately sat down cross-legged. Out of the 10 spots, Su Yun's side occupied 3. Then, Su Yun's side had a very high chance of obtaining 1 out of the 10 spots. Originally, the Eternal Heaven Gods Council had planned to occupy the 10 spots. From the experts that Lung Shinru had brought, it was clear that if they were to sweep through the floating island, this power was something that ordinary sects would not be able to defend against. But they met Su Yun, a pseudo-ancestor that even Lung Shinru could not deal with, which resulted in the group being almost wiped out. Eternal Night Primogenitor floated in the sky, facing the millions of eyes around him. He shouted out the names of the participants in the 3rd round of the large competition. Su Yun and Great Emperor Dao Shi called themselves Nameless Swordsmen and Nameless Swordsmen. However, Long Xi knew that the two of them were the Great Emperor Dao Shi and Su Yun, but she did not expose them, nor did she expose Su Yun's identity as a devil cultivator. No one knew what she was planning, but when the two of them came out, it caused a commotion. After all, no one had ever heard of the two of them, although they knew that there might be a dark horse in the large competition. But to have 2 of them appear at the same time, it was naturally surprising. And why did Jin Jinzi, who everyone thought highly of, disappear? The members of the Sky Cloud Palace and the surroundings all opened their eyes wide as they searched for the figures of Jin Jinzi and the others. However, after searching for a long time, there wasn't a single person, and this caused them to panic. Could it be that Jin Jinzi and the others were completely annihilated on the floating island? Other than the people of the Sky Cloud Palace, the people from the other sects were also panicking. However, to be able to stand out and enter the 3rd round, none of them were ordinary people. At the very least, all of them were great immortals, other than the 2 dark horses that no one knew about. The candidates for the third round of the large competition had already been determined, but Eternal Night Primogenitor was not in a hurry to start the third round. Instead, he sat cross-legged in the sky, as though he was waiting for something. The 10 of them were all meditating in their own training grounds, absorbing the benefits brought to them by the divine fruits and the training on the floating island. Roughly 10 hours later, Eternal Night Primogenitor opened his eyes and spoke slowly. "All right, participants of the third round of the competition, come over here." His voice was loud and clear, but it did not have much of an impact. Even the people who were at the crucial moment of enlightenment would not be affected by his voice and be interrupted. Everyone opened their eyes and walked towards Eternal Night Primogenitor one after another. The silent crowd and the surroundings became excited again. Pairs of eyes stared at the figure flying towards the Eternal Night Primogenitor. Among the 10 of them, 2 of them would obtain the right to comprehend the stone steel directly, while the remaining 8 would receive guidance from Eternal Night Primogenitor. In other words, these 10 were existences that had the possibility of breaking through to the Primogenitor realm. After today's large competition, these 10 people, including the forces behind them, would soar into the sky and become a hegemon of the immortal world. Their names would spread far and wide, and no one would dare to provoke them anymore. Their friends would rejoice because they were on good terms with them, and their enemies would tremble in fear and despair because of today's matter. After today, these 10 people would completely transform. The 10 people slowly flew over and lined up before Eternal Night Primogenitor. Most of their faces were filled with respect and excitement. Eternal Night Primogenitor glanced at these people. His gaze did not linger on any of them for more than 2 breaths of time. He then said, "You all have successfully obtained the divine fruits and entered the third round of the competition. I am very pleased. You all are the pillars of the immortal world, and also the supreme existences that will enter the primogenitor realm in the future. From today onwards, I will guide you for 3 days. 3 days later, you will follow my guidance and enter the third round of the competition. As for the result, it will depend on you all." Eternal Night Primogenitor's words made these people incomparably excited. They did not expect to receive the blessing of the primogenitor before the third round of the competition even began. How could they remain calm? The surrounding immortals revealed looks of envy. They looked at Eternal Night Primogenitor with longing eyes, wishing that they could immediately rush to him and listen to his teachings. "Thank you, Primogenitor." Joyful shouts resounded. "All right, everyone sit down." Eternal Night Primogenitor said indifferently. Everyone then landed at the center of the stone tablet. To match the time of the birth of the stone tablet, Eternal Night Primogenitor's 3 days of guidance were carried out in the space he created. 3 days in the space was equivalent to 1 breath of time outside. Furthermore, the space was isolated from the outside world. The people outside were unable to observe the actions and words of the people inside. Suyin did not know why Eternal Night wanted to keep his secret. If the primogenitor was willing to share his insights with the public, maybe there would not be so few primogenitors in the world. The space was formed. The 10 people sat in it. Eternal Night Primogenitor floated in the air and looked at the 10 of them quietly before speaking. The power of the primogenitor originates from the small world in your body and not from your chi meridians. The primogenitor is the creation god of a civilization, a new and immature civilization's main god. This civilization provides power to the primogenitor, and the primogenitor provides life to the world. This is a complementary and endless cycle. Both cannot be stopped. Although all of you are at the peak of the ascended god realm, your body already possesses the conditions to form a small world. It is just that you do not know how to nurture life, give birth to a civilization, or how to let the seeds of civilization sprout. The power of civilization is the foundation of all power. It is also the path that you must take to become a ruler from a human, an immortal, or a god. Eternal Night Primogenitor spoke very vaguely. At least, everyone was confused. He did not explain how to nurture the seeds of civilization, as though he wanted everyone to guess. Eternal Night Primogenitor spoke intermittently for an entire day. However, many of his words were evasive, as though he was purposely doing so. Often, when he reached a crucial point, he would suddenly stop, causing the seeds of the primogenitor realm to feel depressed. Eternal Night, primogenitor, seemed to have noticed their depressed expressions and said indifferently, "Although all of you are at the peak of the ascended God realm, you must understand that there are many existences at the peak of the ascended God realm in the immortal world. However, the people of the primogenitor realm have to rely on luck and hard work to step into it. If I can let you step into the primogenitor realm with just a few words, wouldn't the primogenitor realm be everywhere?" "Lord Eternal Night, can this junior ask a question?" Just then, the Tao disciple of the Saint Tao suddenly spoke. However, just as he finished speaking, Eternal Night suddenly turned around and stared at him. His eyes seemed to be able to see through him. The Tao disciple's body trembled. Just as the questions were about to reach his throat, he forcefully swallowed them back. "If you have any questions, comprehend it yourself. I can only tell you this much. The primogenitor realm is not something that anyone can enter. If you want to rely on a shortcut to enter, then you are gravely mistaken. You have to rely on yourself for everything." Eternal Night primogenitor's voice was still indifferent, but it had a sense of superiority. However, as a person of the primogenitor realm, there was a fundamental difference between a person of the ascended God realm. No one felt that it was strange. However, Su Yun frowned. He did not agree with Eternal Night's words. Shortcuts? Indeed, there were times when taking shortcuts could achieve one's goal, but the effect was not as good as taking one step at a time. It was the same for cultivation, but sometimes the shortcuts given by the ancestors were more like the correct path compared to taking one step at a time. Wasn't it more of a waste of time and energy for a person to spend 100 years to comprehend the answer to a question than for an ancestor to tell him the answer to the question? Although the lifespan of an existence in the ascended God realm could reach 1,000,000 years, there was still a time limit. Furthermore, most of the things that Eternal Night had said were principles that were dispensable. As for the confusion that everyone had about breaking through in their cultivation, Su Yun did not think that he did not know the answer. On the contrary, he seemed to have deliberately not said it. Was it really to let these people comprehend it themselves? Su Yun felt that Eternal Night did not want these people to step into the primogenitor realm. But if he did not want to speak, why did he summon these 10 people to listen to his teachings? Su Yun patiently listened. The others did not speak anymore, and listened to Eternal Night primogenitor's words seriously. 3 days later, everyone came out of the special space. However, the 10 of them were all worried and puzzled. But very quickly, someone sat down cross-legged and began to meditate. When everyone saw this, they all revealed looks of astonishment. Could it be that he had gained enlightenment from Eternal Night primogenitor's words, and his cultivation had improved? At this stage, any disturbance in cultivation would attract much attention. If he were to break through and advance, it would be a huge matter that would affect the entire myriad heavens. Su Yun looked at the person and realized that the person who had gained enlightenment was the Saint Tao disciple who had spoken earlier. Chapter 15:15. The moment the Saint Tao disciple sat down cross-legged, Eternal Night primogenitor took out a bowl-shaped magic treasure and covered the Tao disciple. 10 years inside the barrier is only the time it takes for an incense stick to burn outside. If any of you have gained something from my explanation and need to go into closed-door cultivation, I will use my magic treasure to help you break through quickly, so that you won't be delayed in the large competition. Eternal Night primogenitor said slowly. Just then, another person sat down and started to comprehend. Su Yun looked and saw that it was Gu Xin. Divine Lion King and 7 Emotions Palace's 7 Emotions Goddesses also sat down, and Eternal Night started to cover them. Ancient World Sex, Gu Xin and Anita Sword Wu also sat down, followed by the scattered immortal Drunken Carefree. Could it be that all of them had gained some enlightenment? Su Yun frowned. The majority of what Eternal Night had said in the past 3 days were not important words, but instead, there were many words that gave people guesses, and a few of them seemed to have the intention of throwing a brick to attract jade. Master! Just then, The Dao Shi Great Emperor suddenly turned his head and spoke to Su Yun. "What is it?" Su Yun frowned and asked. "I feel that I have gained some enlightenment, and I plan to go into closed-door cultivation for a while to see if I can improve my cultivation. This way, I might be able to help in the large competition." The Dao Shi Great Emperor said. Hearing that, Su Yun thought for a moment, then nodded his head and said, "Then you can go into closed-door cultivation, but you must remember, not all of your enlightenment is correct. The path of cultivation is rugged and dangerous. What you have comprehended might be a dangerous path. If you continue to walk forward, not only will you not be able to ascend to the supreme realm, you might even fall into the abyss of eternal damnation. This subordinate will remember this." The Dao Shi Great Emperor cupped his fists, then walked over and sat down cross-legged. Eternal Night Primogenitor dropped the barrier again. At the scene, there were already 7 people in closed-door cultivation, leaving only Su Yun, Lung, Exine, and Ancestor House standing there. "What is it? Didn't you guys comprehend anything?" Eternal Night Primogenitor looked at the 3 and asked indifferently. Su Yun shook his head. The things that the Eternal Night Primogenitor had told him were too little compared to the memories that the demon saint had given him. It was like comparing a mountain to a grain of sand. Even if the Eternal Night Primogenitor avoided the important things at the crucial moment, it would not affect Su Yun, because the things that he knew were not much more than the Eternal Night Primogenitor, and the reason why he had been stuck in the realm of the pseudo-ancestor was because he lacked an opportunity. The stone tablet could be the opportunity for him to comprehend the ancestor's secrets and step into the realm. Lung Xen Ru should be the same. She herself had an ancestor-level master to teach her, so Yong Ye's words did not affect her much, but what made Su Yun curious was Ancestor Hao. The feeling he gave him was too mysterious. He did not know where he came from, nor did he know what his identity was, especially his cultivation, although he was at the peak of the God realm. The feeling he gave Su Yun was different from the Divine Lion King and the 7 Emotions Goddess. After receiving the denial from Su Yun and the other 2, the Eternal Night Primogenitor did not speak anymore and waited quietly. As the ancestor, he had already grasped countless laws, regardless of whether it was the power of the 5 elements or the power of space and time, and such a method to open up space was naturally not a problem for him. At the same time, the time in this space was also under his control. The time it took for an incense stick to burn passed quickly. The moment the cover was lifted, the surrounding people looked at the 7 of them again and felt that the 7 of them had become completely new, as though they had been reborn. Everyone's aura was much more ethereal than before, and everyone's concept was much more mature and stable than before. After all, the time inside and outside the barrier was different. The time it took for an incense stick to burn outside was 10 years inside. These 10 years were nothing to the immortals present, but 10 years was enough for many people to think about many things. "Mistress!" The people of the 7 Emotions Palace rushed towards the 7 Emotions Goddess, all of them revealing looks of anticipation. "Although I have yet to step into the primogenitor realm, I have already seen some things. I believe that in less than 100 years, I will definitely be able to make a leap," the 7 Emotions Goddess said with a smile on her face. Although these words were not loud, it caused a huge uproar in the surroundings. The 7 Emotions Goddess had actually seen through the primogenitor realm, and she could enter the primogenitor realm within 100 years? This was simply explosive news. In an instant, the immortals present looked at the people from the 7 Emotions Palace with respect. "Lady Goddess, don't speak too early. If it was so easy to step into the primogenitor realm, then wouldn't the existence of the primogenitor be everywhere?" The Divine Lion King shook his head, obviously dissatisfied with the goddess's words. "Don't boast here just because you have some knowledge. Lord Eternal Night is still up there, on the other side." Gu Xin also snorted. The goddess secretly frowned, but very quickly, her coquettish face changed into a smile that could melt all living things. "If it is compared to all of you, this little girl's comprehension is naturally nothing. I wonder what sect leaders have gained. Of course there are some gains, but I still don't understand. The divine Lion King shouted with a rough voice. His actions seemed to be a bit silly. Everyone tried to probe each other, wanting to get some information that was beneficial to them from each other's mouths. However, on the surface, everyone looked very careless, but in reality, they were very cautious. Although they spoke a lot, they did not reveal any key information. Eternal Night Primogenitor did not say a word and only looked over. As for the Dao Shi Great Emperor, after coming out of seclusion, he walked toward Su Yun. "How is it? How do you feel?" Su Yun asked with a smile. "I feel like I've fallen into a zone of confusion." Dao Shi Great Emperor's eyes were filled with bewilderment, but he didn't seem very happy. He sighed. "My lord, it's hard for me to improve my saber skills. It's too difficult to find a saber user that can be my opponent. Most of the time, my understanding of the saber comes from exploring alone. It's like a blind man trying to find a way forward in the dark. The primogenitor realm is the same. I used the saber to enter the Tao, so I'm afraid it'll be more difficult for me to enter the primogenitor realm than others." "Then do you want to give up?" Su Yun asked. "Of course not." The Dao Shi Great Emperor immediately said. "Then why are you confused?" Su Yun smiled slightly. "Maybe you will pay more than others, and you will suffer more than others. But you must know that what you obtain will definitely be more than others. Your blade techniques will be unparalleled in the world." Hearing that, the Dao Shi Great Emperor fell into a short period of thought. Not to mention the path of the blade. Any path is endless. What we learn is the path that our predecessors have walked on. When we can't learn, we have to walk on our own. We have always been standing on the shoulders of giants, overlooking the world. However, giants are limited. If we always rely on giants, we can only see so much. If we want to stand higher and see further, we have to rely on our own means to become stronger giants. The primogenitor realm has nothing to do with which path you cultivate, because its final concept is that you can return to your ancestral roots. Man's initial power originates from nature, and in the end, nature will return to this place. When we step into the primogenitor realm, the universe will become us, and I will become the universe. Countless living beings, and I will become one. This is not the traditional unity of man and nature, but the unity of man and nature. Hearing that, the Dao Shi Great Emperor immediately thought about it seriously. He knew that Su Yun was revealing the enlightenment of the primogenitor to him. Hearing that, Ancestor Hao looked at Su Yun thoughtfully, but just at that moment, a cold snort suddenly floated over. "I've taught you for 3 days, and all you've comprehended is this so-called thought? If you continue down this path of thought, I'm afraid you'll be consigned to eternal damnation." Hearing that, Su Yun was startled. He looked towards the source of the voice, and was surprised to find that the one who spoke was actually the Eternal Night Primogenitor. "Senior Eternal Night, what do you mean by that?" Su Yun asked indifferently. "I should correct the mistake in what you said just now. Humans and countless living beings were not a single entity. Instead, it was a relationship between the controller and the controlled. What was an ancestor? That is the beginning of everything, and the existences after this beginning are all born from this beginning. In other words, after stepping into the primogenitor realm, everything you see, everything you touch, everything you use, everything you control, you are the center of this universe, the ruler of this world. This kind of thinking is too extreme. The people of the primogenitor should return to their original state." Su Yun shook his head and said casually. His thoughts were not only because of the inheritance of the Devil Saint's memories, but also because of his own subjective thoughts. He did not dare say that he was completely correct, but he would not easily change his thoughts because of the words of others. Unexpectedly, his casual words caused the surrounding immortals to shout angrily. "How dare you? What are you? You actually dare to make irresponsible remarks about the teachings of the Eternal Night Primogenitor? What an ignorant person to actually say such words. Do you think that your thoughts can surpass the primogenitor? How laughable. Who do you think you are? You dare to say that Lord Eternal Night's thoughts are extreme? Hurry up and kneel down and beg for the forgiveness of the primogenitor. If not, we will not forgive you." Yes, we will definitely not forgive you. Hurry up and kneel. The participants and the surrounding spectators all roared in anger. The crowd was agitated. Su Yun's words of doubt immediately made him the target of everyone. The Eternal Knight Primogenitor was a high and mighty ruler. No one could say even half a word of blasphemy to him. The Eternal Knight Primogenitor was also rather dissatisfied. He snorted coldly, and a burst of power directly pressed down on Su Yun. In that moment, Su Yun felt as though all the bones in his body were about to shatter. The Dao Shi Great Emperor was immediately blasted away. An ancestor Hao also retreated a few steps. The might of the Eternal Knight Primogenitor could be said to be unparalleled in the world, and no one could resist him. In his eyes, all living beings were like ants. If he was broad-minded, he could naturally ignore Su Yun's words, but he was not a broad-minded person, and these words made him feel as though he had lost face. "Kneel," the Eternal Knight Primogenitor said. Chapter 15:16. Eternal Knight Primogenitor's words were like a death order. If he did not obey, he would die. Hearing Eternal Knight Primogenitor's words, Su Yun raised his head and stared at him. Kneel? That's impossible. Even if he was the primogenitor, Su Yun would not kneel, because he was not worthy. Did you not hear what I said? Eternal Knight Primogenitor's expression turned cold. His aura became stronger, causing the ground beneath Su Yun's feet to crack. You want me to kneel? Impossible. Su Yun said. At most he would just run. Although the other party was the primogenitor, he had the power of a pseudo-primogenitor. There was still a chance for him to escape. Interesting. How Ancestor smiled as he watched everything. But because of Su Yun's words, the entire place was in an uproar. Countless people stood up and stared at Su Yun in shock. This person, could it be that he's crazy? He actually dares to go against the primogenitor's will. What is he thinking in his head? After offending the Eternal Knight Primogenitor, no one in the 10,000 worlds can save him. Everyone whispered, rejoicing in Su Yun's misfortune. In their eyes, Su Yun's actions were simply courting death. Others could not wait to be respectful to the Eternal Knight Primogenitor. But not only was he not respectful, he even contradicted him. Was he not courting death? Unexpectedly, Su Yun spoke again, this time with a sonorous voice, without any sense of servility. Eternal Knight Primogenitor? What a good primogenitor. As the primogenitor, you use your power to suppress others. I have seen through it. You see that I have seen through the primogenitor's profoundness. You are afraid that I will become a primogenitor in the future and fight against you, so you are purposely suppressing me. Rebel. Even if the Eternal Knight Primogenitor forgives you, I will not forgive you. Gu Xian immediately attacked Su Yun. It was the best time to curry favor with the Eternal Knight Primogenitor. He was not like Etian Xing, to be able to gift the heavenly god wine. He could only use such methods. Seeing that, the other immortals cursed. They also wanted to rush forward to take care of Su Yun, but Gu Xian was one step ahead. Stop! Just then, the Eternal Knight Primogenitor suddenly shouted. Gu Xian's movements froze. He looked at the Eternal Knight Primogenitor in confusion. Everyone turned to look at Eternal Knight Primogenitor. But seeing the Eternal Knight Primogenitor's pitch-black eyes flash with a cold light, the oppressive aura immediately retreated and disappeared without a trace. He said solemnly, You said that I used my power to suppress you because I was afraid that you would ascend to the primogenitor realm and be on the same level as me? Humph, what a joke. Since that's the case, I won't punish you for your rudeness. However, you said that you have comprehended the primogenitor's realm. Does that mean that your current power is above these people and you can take the right to comprehend the stone tablet? Su Yun frowned. Since that's the case, I will allow you to participate in the third round. A mere ant like you is not worthy for me to be angry at you. If you're able to obtain the right to comprehend the stone tablet and successfully obtain one of the 2 spots in the competition, then I will forgive your rudeness just now. If you are unable to do so, then you are arrogant and conceited, looking down on everyone and disrupting the order of the competition. I believe that everyone here hates people like you. If that's the case, You should understand what will happen to you, right? The Eternal Night Primogenitor said indifferently. With just a few words, not only did he raise himself to a noble level, he even made Su Yun worthless. At the same time, he made him the target of everyone. Everyone present thought that as long as they killed Su Yun, they would be able to gain the primogenitor's favor. This way, it would be more interesting than directly killing Su Yun. Everyone present, Gu Xen, Dao Disciple, Wu Wa, Happy Drunk, Seven Emotions Goddess, and Divine Lion King all looked at Su Yun differently. If it wasn't hatred, it was indifference, and they looked at him as though he was a dead man. This guy really knows how to cause trouble. Long Xianli laughed bitterly from afar. It's not that he's causing trouble, it's that trouble is looking for him. Su Qing'er said. However, it was a bit far-fetched to say that trouble was looking for him. This time, Su Yun's words and actions were truly too rash. Who would not be respectful in front of the primogenitor? Only Su Yun dared to speak, but there was nothing he could do. He did not expect the Eternal Night Primogenitor to be so petty. Whoosh! Just then, a miraculous ancient chi shot out from the center of the ancient ruins, instantly filling the entire ancient ruins. Everyone in the ancient ruins was enveloped by the dense and pure ancient chi. They felt as though the chi meridian and flesh in their bodies were being cleansed. The impurities and desires in their bodies were all being removed. They were completely released, as though they were immersed in a wide path. And as long as they casually walked or ran, they would be able to improve their cultivation. How miraculous! Seeing that, everyone cried out in surprise. The stone tablet is about to appear. Time is of the essence. Quickly begin the third round of the competition. The Eternal Night Primogenitor bellowed. With a leap, he landed in the center of the ruins. With a wave of his hand, 5 gigantic golden lotuses appeared within the heavenly control. The 10 of you will be divided into 5 groups. The participants will be selected by drawing lots. The Eternal Night Primogenitor casually grabbed, and 10 round balls appeared in his hands. The 10 of them flew over, and each of them received the round balls from the Eternal Night Primogenitor, opened them, and saw that their opponent's name was recorded inside. If they had already chosen their opponent, they would not need to draw lots. And very quickly, the 10 of them were divided into groups, stepped into the golden lotuses, and began their battles. The third round of the competition was about to begin. Countless people were excited, and no one bothered about Su Yun, since he was a person who was about to die. He might not even be able to survive the first round. What made Su Yun surprised was that his first opponent was the most ferocious, scattered immortal, Happy Drunk. Happy Drunk had been famous for a long time. He had stepped into the peak of the god realm for many years, and, compared to everyone present, he was naturally stronger. Of course, Su Yun did not think that it was a coincidence, because the names in the round balls were determined by the Eternal Night Primogenitor. Seeing that Su Yun and Happy Drunk had stepped into the same golden lotus, the other immortals who were participating in the competition looked regretful. They had hoped that they would be able to fight against Su Yun. I didn't expect Happy Drunk to get the first move. I guess this was arranged by the Eternal Night Primogenitor. After all, he controls the rules of the competition. Sigh. Su Yun can only pray for himself. Happy Drunk is not someone to be trifled with. Eternal Night Primogenitor, I hope this guy dies soon. The people murmured. The participants had also landed on the Golden Lotus stage, and the Eternal Night Primogenitor leaped onto the stage. Looking down at the Golden Lotus, the millions of immortals around him also stared at the Golden Lotus. No one's eyes moved, afraid that they would miss out on the exciting part of the competition. Now, the third round of the Stone Monument competition begins. The Eternal Night Primogenitor said in a deep voice. Su Yun heard him, and his eyes narrowed, staring at Happy Drunk. However, Happy Drunk was not in a hurry to attack. Instead, he walked forward, his lips curling into a smile. I didn't think that I would be favored by the Eternal Night Primogenitor. How lucky. If I kill you, the Eternal Night Primogenitor will definitely look at me differently. And if he can give me a few pointers, maybe I, Happy Drunk, will become the new primogenitor of the immortal realm. Happy Drunk laughed out loud, his eyes full of pride. Can you really defeat me? Su Yun suddenly asked. I admit that you definitely have some strength to be able to stand here. However, when Lord Eternal Night was teaching us, I already made some breakthroughs. My unfettered mental wander has already undergone a qualitative transformation. The small world of my body has already sprouted. Now, I am invincible below the primogenitor realm. That means you can't defeat the primogenitor, right? Su Yun smirked. What do you mean? Happy Drunk's laughing face suddenly froze. I say, Happy Drunk, have you forgotten about me so quickly? Last time, you managed to escape from the tomb of the immortal and demon. This time, I want to see where you can run to. Su Yun laughed, pulled out the heavenly wool sword, and rushed towards Happy Drunk. What? You're Su Yun? You're Su Yun. Happy Drunk's eyes widened, and his tongue trembled as he screamed. It's too late now. Su Yun leaped and rushed over. Happy Drunk did not even have the slightest intention of resisting. The confidence that had just emerged was instantly destroyed. He turned and ran, intending to rush out of the Golden Lotus. However, after the two of them entered the Golden Lotus, a barrier rose around the Golden Lotus, blocking all communication between the inside and outside. Not even sound could be heard, let alone people. This was also why Su Yun dared to let Happy Drunk know his identity. Su Yun could even kill the primogenitor realm. Killing those at the peak of the Ascendant God realm was like slaughtering pigs and selling dogs. Su Yun had mastered the power of the primogenitor. In Happy Drunk's mind, he was the primogenitor. Faced with such a person, Happy Drunk had no intention of resisting. Most of the people outside the arena were paying attention to the battle between Su Yun and Happy Drunk. However, before the two of them had even started fighting, such a terrifying scene had everyone's jaws dropping. Seeing Happy Drunk's terrified expression, as if he wanted to escape the Golden Lotus arena, the crowd gasped. What the hell is going on? Happy Drunk? Why does it seem like Happy Drunk is so afraid of that person? How is that possible? Happy Drunk has not even made a move, and he's already so afraid. What the hell is going on? Everyone was confused as they stared at the Golden Lotus arena. Happy Drunk had nowhere to retreat and could only turn around to face the enemy. However, he seemed to be very afraid and had lost all will to fight. He could not fight at all. The nameless swordsman had already raised the sword in his hand and swung it at Happy Drunk. Happy Drunk activated the power of creation, but Happy Drunk's mind wandered and tried to dodge the attack. However, the power of the sword was unstoppable and pervasive, sealing off the entire Golden Lotus arena. Happy Drunk had nowhere to retreat and was torn apart by the power of the sword. He died instantly. The crowd was shocked. A powerhouse at the peak of the Ascendant God realm was killed just like that, and it was a crushing death. Not even his soul was left. How terrifying! Even the Eternal Night primogenitor opened his eyes and looked at Su Yun. Chapter 15-17. Su Yun was the first to end the battle, shocking everyone. However, everyone was still curious about Su Yun's methods. How did Happy Drunk end up like that? Why was he so afraid that he completely lost the ability to fight back? What happened to him? Or did it have something to do with this nameless swordsman? Originally, everyone thought that Happy Drunk would kill Su Yun with a shocking method. They never expected that the result would be the exact opposite. Happy Drunk was brutally slaughtered. He did not even have the chance to fight back. This nameless swordsman may have used a sword, but I'm guessing that he must have mastered some kind of magical illusion technique or some kind of powerful treasure that can attack one's mind. When he was fighting against Happy Drunk, he must have used this method to attack his mind, causing Happy Drunk to break down and lose his will to fight. That's how he won the competition, one of the immortals said loudly. When everyone heard this, they all nodded. Although this immortals theory was a little far-fetched, Happy Drunk was at the pinnacle of the ascended gods. How could he be so easily tricked? However, based on the current situation, this theory was the most reasonable. The crowd speculated and analyzed. Very soon, the conclusion was out. Su Yun had only used a sneak attack to attack Happy Drunk's spirit, destroying his willpower. That was why he had won so easily. Therefore, many people started to scold Su Yun for being despicable. However, Su Yun did not care. As long as he could win and gain the right to study the ancient stone tablet, everything else did not matter. After the battle, Su Yun sat cross-legged in the golden lotus to rest, waiting for the next round. The buzzing noise around him was endless, but he ignored it. Soon, the second round ended. But to everyone's surprise, the winner of the second round was Ancestor Hao. His opponent, the Lion God King, was covered in wounds and looked particularly miserable. Ancestor Hao, on the other hand, was unharmed. He leaned against the golden lotus petals, chewing on a long object. I've never seen this guy before. Everyone was inexplicably excited. There were many dark horses in this competition. In a vast world of immortals, there were many crouching tigers and hidden dragons. Ancestor Hao defeated the divine Lion King. Not long after, the other golden lotuses also finished their battles. Even though they were all at the peak of the ascended god realm, there were still differences between the strong and the weak. Realms were just a general division of strength, but the treasures and tricks in each person's hands were different. The seven emotions goddess defeated the divine Dao disciple. Long Xinru defeated the selfless sword, and Dao Shi Great Emperor was still fighting with Gu Xian of the Ancient Era sect. The two of them went all out and didn't hold anything back. Great Emperor Dao Shi's violent blade tore through the void. Each blade was terrifying and seemed to be able to stir up the universe and overturn reincarnation. The entire golden lotus swayed along with his blade aura. Gu Xian used the ancient heart divine technique and the spear in his hand to advance and retreat freely. Once he attacked, his aura wasn't any weaker than Great Emperor Dao Shi. Both of them were injured, and neither was able to gain an advantage over the other. However, Gu Xian clearly recognized Dao Shi Great Emperor's saber technique. "You're Great Emperor Dao Shi, right? I recognize your saber technique," Gu Xian said solemnly. "So what if I do? Today, I will kill you to prove my Dao." Great Emperor Dao Shi went completely crazy. The stone tablet competition was extremely important. If he could get a good ranking, he would definitely be able to become a progenitor. This was the dream of many ascended gods. This was a rare opportunity. If he didn't fight for it now, when would he fight for it? Kill me to prove your Dao? You think you're qualified? Gu Xian roared and slapped the void with both of his hands. A blood-red radiance bloomed from his chest. This was the power of his heart. It was said that every sect master of the Ancient Era sect would pass the power of their heart to the next successor. When it came to Gu Xian's generation, no one knew how strong the power of his heart was. The power of his heart bloomed, and the surrounding void was filled with a monstrous aura. It revolved around Gu Xian as if it was under his control. Great Emperor Dao Shi's saber chi surged forward but couldn't tear apart this aura. "Break for me!" Great Emperor Dao Shi roared and slashed horizontally with his violent saber intent that contained the divine power of the heavens and earth. Even Yong Yi was moved by this attack. Boom! The tyrant's saber collided with the aura, causing it to tremble. If this saber was to land on a person other than the progenitor, anyone would be killed on the spot. "Is this all you've got?" Gu Xian snorted and released his aura. He charged forward, creating a muffled explosion in the void. The spear in Gu Xian's hand stabbed forward like a mad dragon. The spear contained all of his heart's power. Great Emperor Dao Shi immediately raised his saber to block, but in the next second, he felt something was wrong. This spear wasn't right. It didn't have a sharp and unstoppable intent. Instead, it had a terrifying power that could destroy the heavens and earth. Not good. This wasn't a spear. Great Emperor Dao Shi's expression changed, and he immediately withdrew his saber. However, he was still a step too late. The spear suddenly exploded, and terrifying shockwaves bombarded Great Emperor Dao Shi's body. He spat out 3 mouthfuls of blood in the air and fell to the ground. When he looked at Gu Xian again, the spear in his hand had turned into a sledgehammer. "Thousand transformation divine art!" Someone outside exclaimed. "What? The legendary divine weapon that can change into thousands of forms?" It is said that this divine weapon was the weapon of an unparalleled divine general in the ancient battlefield. It was originally recorded in the history books, but to think that it would appear today and in the hands of the ancient era sect, this has truly broadened my horizons. The crowd was in an uproar. The treasure that Gu Xin used caused many to be envious and excited. It was an ancient divine weapon. Even Eternal Night, Primogenitor, could not help but look at the weapon in Gu Xion's hands. Such a treasure, even the Primogenitor would care about it. Great Emperor Daoshi was defeated and Gu Xion won. In the 10 great competition, 1 person died, 5 people won 1 round for lost 1 round, and the Divine Lion King was too heavily injured and obviously could not participate in the competition. Although the great Emperor Daoshi could fight, he had no hope against any of the participants, and might even lose his life in the next round. Su Yan also advised him to rest and recuperate for the time being, and did not need to fight. Gu Xian did not kill him, because he wanted to preserve his strength for the next round, but that did not mean that others would not take his life and kill to establish their might. Just like that, 3 people were eliminated and could no longer participate in the competition. The remaining 7 would have to compete again. The 3rd round did not mean that one would lose the chance to advance. As long as one still had fighting strength, they could continue to challenge until their ranking was fixed. 2 golden lotuses were canceled. Eternal Night, Primogenitor, threw out a few more balls for people to draw lots. In this round, there would be 1 person waiting outside to fight the loser and advance. Very quickly, the names for the 2nd round were decided. Su Yun against Gu Xin, Selfless Sword against Saint Dao Disciples, 7 Emotions Goddess against Lung Xin Ru, while Ancestor Hao waited outside. Seeing Su Yun leap over, Gu Xion's expression became extremely ugly. He knew the identity of the great Emperor Daoshi, so the person in front of him was most likely the legendary Su Yun. He never thought that Su Yun would actually participate in the large competition of the ancient stone tablet. But from what he saw, Su Yun was definitely not at the Primogenitor realm. Otherwise, why would he come here? And why would he be restricted by Eternal Night, Primogenitor? So, everything was just an illusion. Su Yun? Gu Xian tried to ask. Seems like I'm right. I think Happy Drunk must have been scared to death by you, right? Gu Xian said coldly. Why? Are you giving up? Su Yun smiled. Give up? How is that possible? I'm not a trash like Happy Drunk. Furthermore, do you think you can win for sure? I will let you know exactly how laughable your arrogance and conceit are. Gu Xian said coldly. Once again, he activated his heart's power. The entire Golden Lotus seemed to have fallen into his domain. I don't really understand what you're saying, but let me tell you something first. When Eternal Night, Primogenitor, was suppressing me, you seem to be the one who shouted the loudest. Since that's the case, I will not show you any mercy. You better use your full strength, or else I'm afraid you won't have a chance. Su Yun had long wanted to kill Gu Xian. Maniac, submit to the power of my ancient heart. Gu Xian roared in anger. He wielded the 1,000 transformation divine weapon and charged forward again. This time, the 1,000 transformation divine weapon turned into a sword. It was long and slender, brimming with sword intent. It carried a boundless aura, as if it wanted to crush Su Yun in terms of sword Dao. Su Yun stared intently at the 1,000 transformations divine might. The heavenly will sword in his hand slashed out, and a surging, killing force swept out. The boundless sword force that could cause one soul to tremble instantly exploded, dispersing Gu Xion's aura. What? Gu Xian was shocked. The sword slashed out again. The sharp sword Qi was like an axe that could split the sky. It was unstoppable, as if it could split anything in half. Gu Xian did not dare to take the attack head-on. He did not expect Su Yun's true strength to be so terrifying. Could the rumors be true? Just as Gu Xian was escaping, he revealed his weakness. Su Yun's eyes narrowed as his killing intent surged. You and I are not on the same level, Su Yun said. The heavenly will sword descended and tore Gu Xian's body apart. Pucci, Gu Xian's body crumbled. The 1,000 transformation divine weapon fell from the sky. He died instantly. Eliminated Hua. The crowd was in an uproar. Countless people stood up from their seats and stared at the scene in shock. The people from the ancient era sect were dumbfounded. They could not believe what they had just witnessed. The young master was dead. Now, even the sect leader was dead. The ancient era sect would most likely be erased from the immortal world. In fact, it was not only the ancient era sect. The Qianyan Palace and the Star Pavilion were the same. Even though the rules of the Great Stone Tablet competition were set to prevent too much killing, as long as there were people, there would be killing and death. This was something that no one could avoid. Su Yin had once again used his absolute strength to defeat Gu Xin and even killed him. This time, no one dared to look down on him. Those who thought that Su Yin had used an illusion technique to launch a sneak attack kept their mouths shut. Who would dare to speak rudely again? Even an idiot could tell that it was not because Gu Xin and Happy Drunk were too careless. It was because Su Yin was too strong. They could not fight back at all. This was the power of a pseudo-ancestor. Even an ascended God realm cultivator was nothing in front of him. Chapter 15:18. Su Yin once again ended the battle swiftly and fiercely. His methods were extremely cruel and intimidating. And not long after, Lung Xinru also ended the battle. She, who was also a pseudo-ancestor existence, did not need to spend too much time to defeat her opponent. The Seven Emotions goddess was defeated miserably, while the Tao disciples and the Enita sword were rather miserable. The two of them were evenly matched, and they were evenly matched. Both of them had been defeated once before, and if they were to lose again this time, they would not have the fate of the stone tablet. Just when everyone's attention was focused on the duel between the Taoist disciple and the selfless sword, a rather noisy voice rang out. Alas, so boring. Oh, Eternal Night Ancestor looked towards Ancestor Hao and said indifferently, "Do you want to go up? These people have already fought once. I can wait for them to recover." Ancestor Hao laughed. No need to deal with you. Any state is fine." Lung Xinru stood out and said coldly, "Since you want to be my opponent, you have to acknowledge it first." Ancestor Hao laughed. Eternal Night Ancestor nodded and said indifferently, "If the two of you have no objections, we can have a proper competition. The victory and defeat between the two of you can be included in the ranking." "All right." Lung Xinru's eyes lit up, and she immediately jumped into the Golden Lotus. She had already won 2 rounds. If she defeated Ancestor Hao, she would have won 3 rounds. If nothing unexpected happened, she would definitely get one of the 2 spots to comprehend the stone tablet. Ancestor Hao's lips curled up when he saw this. He leaped into the Golden Lotus. Lung Xinru's eyes were filled with confidence and pride. Although she did not know the identity of the person in front of her and could not even see through his strength, she believed that he was at most at the peak of the God realm. Even if something unexpected happened and she misjudged his strength, she would not be afraid, as he had the power of a pseudo-ancestor. But pseudo-ancestor? Was it possible? In the entire immortal world, or even the 10,000 realms, there were probably only 2 pseudo-ancestors like Su Yun and her. The probability of that was too low. Su Yin looked towards the Golden Lotus. In truth, he did not know how strong Ancestor Hao was. Lung Xinru's strength was not simple, and he believed that she could force Ancestor Hao to use his full strength. The battle between Lung Xinru and Ancestor Hao had not even begun yet, but it had already attracted the attention of most of the people present. On the other hand, the battle between the Tao disciple and Anita was not that interesting, causing the 2 of them to feel rather depressed. 10 moves. Lung Xinru, who was standing in the Golden Lotus, suddenly spoke. 10 moves? What's wrong? Ancestor Hao smiled. I'll deal with you within 10 moves. Lung Xinru said in a low voice. So confident? Ancestor Hao was rather surprised. He then smiled slightly and said, If you cannot defeat me within 10 moves, then what? Won't you lose all your face? If I can't defeat you within 10 moves, I can only say that my cultivation is not refined enough. However, that shouldn't be possible. Then if I lose within 10 moves, what will you say? Ancestor Hao suddenly said. When he said this, Lung Xinru was stunned for a moment. Then she laughed coldly. Are you joking? I'm serious. What a joke. Lung Xinru did not want to waste any more time with Ancestor Hao. She leaped and pounced at him. A gray long sword appeared in her hand. Like a poisonous snake, she stabbed forward. The gray sword overflowed with terrifying progenitor's power, causing ripples in the void. It was extremely terrifying. Eternal Night Primogenitor looked at Long Shinru. He could tell that Long Shinru's treasure contained a lot of progenitor's power. He also guessed that Long Shinru was being taught by a powerful progenitor. I didn't expect to create a small world. Is this the power of a pseudo-progenitor? Eternal Night Primogenitor's eyes flashed with a strange light, but no one saw it. The spectators also revealed looks of astonishment. This terrifying power was simply terrifying. However, at this moment, Ancestor Hao suddenly raised his hand and slammed into the air. A mysterious power directly broke through the sword's sword chi and slammed into the sword. Long Shinru and the sword were forced back. What? Another uproar arose. Countless pairs of eyes widened as they stared at this terrifying scene in shock. That was the progenitor's power. It was destroyed by a single punch? What power did he use just now? Was it the power of creation? The power of creation was like a child's fist in front of the progenitor's power. There was no comparison at all, let alone shattering the progenitor's power. Who exactly are you? Long Shinru was extremely shocked. Even Eternal Night Primogenitor stared straight at Ancestor Hao, his eyes extremely serious. Who I am is not important. What's important is that I came here to participate in the Great Stone Monument competition. I want to obtain the right to comprehend the stone monument. Ancestor Hao laughed, then raised his head and swept a glance at Eternal Night Primogenitor. Although it was just a glance, it gave people a deep feeling. Long Shinru secretly snorted. She clenched her teeth. At the moment, she felt extremely gloomy in her heart. She was already facing Su Yun, causing her to be extremely fearful. Initially, when she participated in the great competition, she was certain that she would be number one. But who would have thought that after Su Yun, another Ancestor Hao would appear? You still have 7 moves. Ancestor Hao laughed. Long Shinru had nowhere to retreat and could only bite the bullet. The gray sword swept up countless sword images, like the mouth of an ancient desolation. It swallowed Ancestor Hao. Ancestor Hao's body moved. He took a step forward, but it was a step of 10,000 miles, avoiding the sword images devouring. The perfect spatial energy was used by him, causing the surrounding people to exclaim in surprise. 5 moves! Devour heaven and earth. Long Shinru was forced into a corner. She activated her technique again. The sky suddenly darkened. A gigantic whirlpool appeared in the sky, sucking towards Ancestor Hao. However, Ancestor Hao did not move at all. No matter how terrifying the power of the whirlpool was, it could not shake him in the slightest. Long Shinru slashed her sword again, wanting to attack head-on, but Ancestor Hao's figure was sometimes real and sometimes fake. It was unfathomable, as though he had always been a non-existent person, but he had always existed. This kind of opponent was simply terrifying. Suyin could not help but focus his eyes. Although Ancestor Hao did not unleash his full strength, just from a few moves just now, it was enough for him to confirm that Ancestor Hao's strength was far above the peak of the God-conferred realm. It was likely that he had already surpassed the God-conferred realm. All right, you've already used 9 moves. At this time, Ancestor Hao suddenly calmed down, looked at Long Shinru, who was gasping for breath, and said with a smile. Long Shinru gritted her teeth in anger, wishing that she could immediately tear the person in front of her into 1,000 pieces. The scene was silent, but everyone could tell that it was impossible for Long Shinru to kill Ancestor Hao in 10 moves. Not to mention 10 moves, even 100 or 1,000 moves would not be enough. The current Long Shinru was no longer a question of how many moves she could defeat Ancestor Hao, but whether or not she could defeat him. Thinking back to what she had said before, Long Shinru felt her face burning. The guy in front of her had hidden himself so deeply to actually make her embarrass herself in front of everyone. I'll use the remaining move. At this moment, Ancestor Hao suddenly shouted and punched out. At this moment, his punch seemed to contain the power of the universe. It was so powerful that it was unbelievable. Long Shinru anxiously raised her sword to prepare, but just as her sword struck out, the aura on the sword was completely destroyed by her opponent, and the sword's might completely dissipated. What? Long Shinru's eyes trembled. The power seemed to have drilled into the void, immediately disappearing without a trace, and in a split second, it rushed out from the void in front of her, directly appearing in front of Long Shinru. Bang! Long Shinru's body flew out and landed fiercely on the ground. The aura on her body was immediately dispersed, as if her entire body had been hollowed out. She did not have the slightest bit of strength or room to resist. Even Su Yun was dumbstruck by this attack. Su Yun understood Long Shinru's strength. The reason why he was able to defeat Long Shinru so easily twice was actually because of his psychological tactics, but Ancestor Hao seemed to only rely on his powerful strength to suppress her, especially that attack. Just now, he could not even react to how it was created, and such a terrifying phenomenon occurred. Ancestor Hao, what kind of strength was he? Pseudo-ancestor realm? Suyin opened his eyes wide and guessed anxiously. However, Eternal Night Primogenitor had already spoken. There's no need to fight, you've won. His voice became a bit low, and the way he looked at Ancestor Hao was also different from before. Very few people noticed these changes. Long Shinru stood up unwillingly. She was injured, but it was not serious, but she did not persist. The strength that Ancestor Hao had displayed was too strong. Could it be that the people who snatched the right to comprehend the stone tablet were all monsters? Ancestor Hao smiled casually and directly jumped out of the Golden Lotus, looking very relaxed. He did not even use much strength to deal with Long Shinru. After Long Shinru was defeated, the victor between the Dao Disciple and the Inata Sword was also decided. The Inata Sword defeated the Dao Disciple by half a move and won. The next battle was Su Yun against the Seven Emotions Goddess, the Dao Disciple against Ancestor Hao. If he could defeat Ancestor Hao, there would still be a sliver of hope, but the current Ancestor Hao gave off an incomparably powerful feeling. Even Long Shinru could not take one move from him, let alone the Dao Disciple. Without any suspense, the Dao Disciple lost miserably and completely lost the chance to obtain the right to comprehend the stone tablet. He was directly eliminated, and Ancestor Hao became the person with the highest chance of obtaining the right to comprehend it. As for Su Yun against the Seven Emotions Goddess, there was not much suspense. The two of them landed on the Golden Lotus. The Seven Emotions Goddess had a charming smile on her face as she looked at Su Yun. "Sir, have we met somewhere before?" Although the Seven Emotions Goddess had not recognized Su Yun, who had disguised himself, she was sensitive enough to sense something. "Of course we've met before. Previously outside the ruins, weren't you, Yi Tianxing the Star Sage and Jin Junzi, still chatting and laughing with me?" Su Yun said indifferently. Hearing that, the Seven Emotions Goddess's smile froze. She immediately understood who the guy in front of her was, but she quickly laughed. "So it's you, sir, hee. I never thought that with your strength, you would actually make it to the third round of the competition and even obtain such an outstanding result. The goddess truly admires you." "That's right, my strength is not bad, and my luck is not bad. But for the likes of the Star Sage and Jin Jinzi, they are not so lucky. The two of them are too impulsive, and even before the end of the competition, they were already in a hurry to find me. So, I had no choice but to send them away in advance." Su Yun said indifferently. With that said, the Seven Emotions Goddess's heart jumped a few times. Chapter 15:19. Su Yun's words were very obvious. He wanted to tell the Seven Emotions Goddess that he was the one who killed Venerable Xing Chun and Jin Jinzi, and his goal was to intimidate the Seven Emotions Goddess. Of course, I'm not telling you this to scare you. I just want to tell you that the agreement between us is still valid. After this battle, I'll be waiting for you outside the ruins. I hope you won't break your promise." Su Yun pulled out the heavenly sword, pointed it at the Seven Emotions Goddess, and said indifferently, "Let's begin." The Seven Emotions Goddess's expression changed for a moment. Then she laughed awkwardly. "What you said is extremely true. No matter what, let's finish this match first. If that's the case, then be careful. This little girl is about to make her move." With that said, the seven emotions goddess waved out a rainbow silk. Floating in the air, a large amount of spirit techniques were released. The entire golden lotus was enveloped by a dense spirit technique, and in that moment, Su Yun discovered that the world around him was quickly changing, and countless beautiful figures appeared, but they did not pounce on Su Yun like ordinary bewitching illusions, but directly took out their swords and slashed at Su Yun. Su Yun frowned. He raised his sword and attacked, but just as the sword was about to pierce through them, their eyes suddenly flickered. That kind of pitiful, resentful, and deep eyes seemed to be able to melt anyone's heart. This kind of mental attack that was launched at the moment of the attack was terrifying, and it was an illusion within an illusion. It had to be known that these so-called beauties were all fictitious and did not exist. However, the seven emotions goddess was able to cast an illusion within an illusion. This required a terrifying understanding of illusion to be able to do so. Su Yun secretly snorted. He forcefully used his spirit power to clash with it. But after this layer of illusion technique was broken, after the world collapsed, another new world and endless illusion technique attacks were waiting for Su Yun. Su Yun continued to forcefully use his tyrannical spirit power to break through without stopping. He actually broke through a total of 9,999 illusion technique worlds. From the looks of it, the seven emotions goddess was planning to use her mental strength to forcefully trap Su Yun. If Su Yun did not think of a way to break through, he would probably be trapped in the seven emotions goddess's mental shackles for the rest of his life, unable to extricate himself. Furthermore, his spirit would gradually be devoured by the seven emotions goddess, and when his spirit completely collapsed, his soul would be defenseless, and he would be devoured. In this way, Su Yun would turn from a walking corpse to a cold corpse, and a corpse that could not be revived. What terrifying methods! They were great immortals after all, and they were not ordinary people. The people outside the arena exclaimed. But right at this moment, a terrifying mental storm suddenly surged out from Su Yun's body. This mental storm was like a sharp sword, directly piercing towards the seven emotions goddess's mental restraint. The seemingly thick and unbreakable spiritual world was instantly torn apart like a piece of paper. This spiritual storm was too terrifying. The seven emotions goddess's expression changed slightly. She hurriedly used the power of good fortune to strengthen her spirit spell. However, this terrifying spirit storm was extremely sharp. It cut through the spirit binding bit by bit and nibbled away bit by bit. Although the seven emotions goddesses used all her strength, she could not stop this trend. Soon, the mental restraint was completely broken. Su Yun stood in front of her, unsheathed the heavenly will sword, and slowly walked over. The seven emotions goddess's expression changed slightly. Her chest rose and fell violently, and the aura in her body became unstable. The people who were Su Yun's opponents before were all dead now. In a large competition, fists and kicks had no eyes, so even if someone died, it would be a very normal thing. In other words, if Su Yun killed her here, no one would stand out to speak ill of her and uphold justice for her. "I admit defeat," she anxiously shouted. To be able to break her own mental technique so easily, the person in front of her was extremely terrifying. The seven emotions goddess was a person who was extremely good at observing people's expressions. She had already experienced a bit of Su Yun's strength in the previous exchange. Admit defeat? Although you can admit defeat now, what about after the large competition? Su Yun asked indifferently, after he said that the seven emotions goddess expression became extremely interesting. Now that the stellar star Venerable was dead and Jin Jinzi had been killed, with just Tian Xing, the Lion God King, and her, they might not be able to deal with this guy. What should I do? The seven emotions goddess's heart was in a mess. If she knew that Su Yun was so strong, how would she dare to provoke him? She really didn't expect that because of Tian Xing, she would get into trouble. "Sir, previously we were blind. I hope that you will be magnanimous and not bother about this matter with us. Then let's forget about the agreement. How about it? The seven emotions goddess said carefully. If you say let it go, then let it go. If you say you want to fight, then let it go. What do you take me for? Su Yun said coldly. If I don't have powerful strength, will you let me go? Then what should Lord do? The seven emotions goddess was at her wit's end. It's you guys that want to give me an explanation. Why are you asking me? Su Yun said. The seven emotions goddess's eyes swayed as she said in a low voice. We are willing to compensate you with magic treasure-s, immortal coins, and pills. What do you think? Sure, but as for how much you want and what you want, I'll tell you after the large competition. Su Yun said in a low voice. All right, you can let the Divine Lion King and Tian Xing prepare as well. With that, Su Yun flipped out of the Golden Lotus. The seven emotions goddess sighed and left the Golden Lotus as well. If he could deduct a sum of resources from these people, it would be beneficial to Su Yun, and it would be much better than directly killing them. The seven emotions goddess automatically admitted defeat, and Su Yun obtained another victory. Right now, the ones with the most hope of obtaining the right to comprehend were him and Ancestor Hao. The others had all lost, and now, as long as Su Yun and Long Xinru fought again, Ancestor Hao and Anita Jian would fight again, they would be able to decide the top two people who had the right to comprehend the stone tablet. As for who was first and who was second, it was no longer important. There was no suspense in whether Ancestor Hao could defeat Anita or not. It all depended on whether Su Yun could defeat Long Xinru. Ancestor Hao and Anita stepped into the Golden Lotus. Su Yun did not request a rest and directly stepped into the Golden Lotus, waiting for Long Xinru. This was already the third time Long Xinru had fought with Su Yun. The first two times she had lost miserably, but this time, could she wash away the humiliation from before? Su Yun stood quietly inside the Golden Lotus and waited. Long Xinru stayed outside for a moment, then leaped into the Golden Lotus. Su Yun looked at Long Xinru quietly. He did not seem arrogant just because the other party had lost him twice. However, even though Long Xinru had entered the Golden Lotus, there was no fighting intent on her face. She took a light breath and said indifferently, I admit defeat. What? The immortals outside the arena who were still waiting to watch the exciting battle all revealed looks of astonishment. No one would have thought that Long Xinru would actually admit defeat. Furthermore, she admitted defeat without even fighting. How could she be so happy? Su Yun was also surprised. He looked at Long Xinru, only to realize that there was no reluctance in her eyes, but instead, there was a trace of playfulness. What did this mean? Su Yun was suspicious. He did not know what Long Xinru meant. If she gave up so easily, Su Yun would not believe it. After all, this concerned whether or not he could obtain the right to comprehend the stone tablet. Long Xinru did not hesitate at all. After admitting defeat, she immediately jumped out of the Golden Lotus. This time's Great Stone Monument competition ended with Long Xinru admitting defeat. Countless people felt disappointed and bored. They had thought that there would be an earth-shattering battle, but they did not expect that what they were waiting for was to admit defeat and surrender. However, no one dared to complain to Long Xinru. Even if she admitted defeat, with her strength, no one dared to say anything. Long Xinru has admitted defeat. Then, the two immortals who have maintained a complete victory are this nameless swordsman and Ancestor Hao. I announce that the two of you have obtained the right to comprehend the stone tablet. When the stone tablet comes into being, you can enjoy the stone tablet, look up to it, and obtain the chance to become an ancestor. Eternal Night Primogenitor stood in the sky and announced with a grand voice. With that said, the entire arena went silent, and after a moment, it became an uproar. A few people who wanted to curry favor with Su Yun and Ancestor Hao immediately sent out congratulatory words, but they were not familiar with the two of them, so it was rather awkward to get close to them. Eternal Night Primogenitor waved at Su Yun and Ancestor Hao. The two of them flew over. The two of you have obtained the right to comprehend the stone tablet. Now, you only need to wait here, wait for the stone tablet to appear, then you can enter to comprehend. One person at a time, you can discuss who will enter first. Eternal Night Primogenitor said. There's no need to discuss. It's the same no matter who enters first. Ancestor House said carefreely. Eternal Night Primogenitor nodded and did not speak anymore. But at this moment, someone exhaled. Master Eternal Night, this lowly one has a grievance. I hope Master Eternal Night can help this lowly one. This voice was not unfamiliar. In the middle of the ruins, this voice was especially loud, causing many people to stop talking and shift their gazes. Everyone looked. The person who spoke was Etian Xing. Suyin turned and looked at Etian Xing. Eternal Night Primogenitor also looked at Etian Xing. Etian Xing was the one who was going to offer the heavenly god wine. Eternal Night Primogenitor would not ignore the manager of the Wine King Pavilion. What grievance do you have? Tell me. Eternal Night Primogenitor said indifferently. It's about my beloved daughter. Etian Xing pretended to cry, pointed at Su Yun, and said angrily, just now this lowly one received news that the heavenly god wine caravan that my beloved daughter was escorted was robbed, and the one who killed my beloved daughter and stole the heavenly god wine is this guy. It seemed like the words that the seven emotions goddess told him not only did not make Etian Xing submit, but it made him bite back. Su Yin frowned, but the scene was in an uproar. Eternal Night Primogenitor also frowned, stared at Su Yun, and asked, Nameless swordsman, is this true? What is your identity? Who are you? Isn't it time for you to reveal yourself? This is just Pavilion Master Yi's side of the story. It cannot be taken seriously. As for my identity, the Great Stone Tablet competition did not state that I need to reveal my identity to participate, right? Su Yin said indifferently. But the Great Stone Tablet competition has a rule that devil cultivators are not allowed to participate. Just then, the cheers came again. Looking, the person who spoke was Lung Xinru. Chapter 1520. Hearing that, everyone's heart jumped, and exclamations of surprise and doubt could be heard. Devil cultivator? What devil cultivator? What is Miss Ling talking about? Someone asked loudly. Lung Xinru sneered and stared at Su Yun, her eyes flashing with a strange light, and her voice raised a few notches. This nameless swordsman is actually the Devil Lord Su Yun, who is famous in the immortal world. The current him has already condensed a small world and entered the realm of the pseudo-ancestor. He came here to participate in the large competition and obtain the right to comprehend the stone tablet. His goal is to use the ancient stone tablet to step into the ancestor realm. Do you think I'm right? Lord, Devil Lord. Lung Xinru stared at Su Yun with a smile in her eyes. Su Yun looked at Lung Xinru indifferently, but did not panic in the slightest, and Lung Xinru's words immediately caused the surroundings to explode. Devil cultivator? The grand competition was controlled by the experts of the immortal world. Its purpose was to cultivate the experts of the immortal world and stabilize the position of the immortal world in the myriad of worlds. After all, the antiquity relic existed in the immortal world. It was not that people from other worlds couldn't participate. As long as they sneaked in and pretended to be from the immortal world, it was also possible. However, if it was the sworn enemy of the immortal world, it was a different story. Not only did this person steal the heavenly god brew that the Wine King Pavilion wanted to offer to Lord Eternal Night, he also harmed the people of the Wine King Pavilion and Pavilion Master Yi's beloved daughter, and he is also a heinous demon. How can we let such a person comprehend the stone tablet? If he is allowed to comprehend the great Tao, wouldn't he be a great threat to the 10,000 worlds? Who knows how many people will suffer under the hands of this demon? Lord Eternal Night, according to my plan, why don't we deprive this person of the right to comprehend the stone tablet, give it to Miss Lung, and then kill this person in front of everyone to intimidate the demon realm? What do you think? A person stood up and cupped his fist towards the Eternal Night Primogenitor and said respectfully. Su Yin looked over and realized that the person who spoke was the man who stopped him from killing Etian Xing. This man was called Yi Guangzi and was Etian Xing's close friend. He was a rogue immortal, but he was powerful and had a high status. Many people thought that he was from the Wine King Pavilion, but that was not the case. It was said that his realm was even higher than Happy Drunks. Lord Yi is right. Lord Eternal Night, this demon must be eliminated. He's a pseudo-progenitor. If we don't eliminate him now, he'll be a huge threat to our world in the future. That's right, Lord Yongya. Today, this demon has delivered himself to us. How can we let him go so easily? Kill him. Yes, kill him. Kill him. Shouts rang out incessantly. Everyone seemed extremely excited. Towards the devil cultivator, these people were surprisingly united. However, if it was said that they were only looking at Su Yun from the perspective of an immortal, it would be righteous, but many of them were actually eyeing the treasures on Su Yun's body. After all, he was a pseudo-ancestor. How could he have some scrap metal? After killing them, the treasure would definitely be divided. With Yongya here, no one would dare to take it all for themselves. Eternal Night, primogenitor, squinted his eyes. His deep eyes were filled with killing intent. Do you have anything else to say? Eternal Night, primogenitor, stared at Su Yun and spoke slowly. Su Yun looked at him, but did not say anything. In truth, he already had a plan to deal with such a situation. If not, he would not have let Long Shinru know of his identity. However, what surprised him was that Eternal Night primogenitor's gaze seemed to be a little strange. His killing intent did not seem to be because he was a devil cultivator. Eternal Night primogenitor raised his hand again, pointed at Ancestor Hao, and said, "The two of you seem to be together. Since you are a devil cultivator, then he will definitely not stay out of this. The two of you must be accomplices. Both of you are devil cultivator, right?" "Oh, I've also become a devil cultivator?" Ancestor Hao was a little surprised, then laughed. "Interesting, Eternal Night. What are you planning? Since you are a devil cultivator, you should naturally be eliminated immediately. And in this competition, all the people who are comprehending the stone tablet are devil cultivator. So you all cannot comprehend it, and the ranking should not be left to the weak. Coincidentally, I am somewhat interested in this stone tablet, so this time, the right to comprehend it should continue to be left to me. And as for the few of you, I suspect that you are all devil cultivators, so I will personally get rid of you, to imprison your souls. As a punishment." Yongyi pointed at the Tao disciples, Anata, Lung Shinru, and the others, and spoke again. As soon as these words fell, it immediately caused a huge uproar. Everyone was shocked. The Tao disciples and Anata had shocked expressions on their faces as they looked at Yongyi in disbelief. In that instant, they understood what Yongyi meant. Actually, this grand competition was completely meaningless. From the very beginning, Yongyi did not intend to choose any so-called people who could comprehend the stone steels. He had long planned to take everything for himself. With his strength, he could naturally seize the right to comprehend the stone steels by force. However, he did not do so. After all, doing so would greatly affect his reputation. Moreover, he seemed to be planning to use this grand competition to select some powerful and talented experts from the immortal world. He should be planning to use the souls of these experts to do something. Now, he was using Long Shinru as an excuse to eliminate these people and seize their souls. This was the true reason why Eternal Night primogenitor came here. "I'm also a devil cultivator?" "Yongyi, what do you mean by this? Why are you so sure that I am also a devil cultivator?" Lung Shinru was in disbelief. She was the one who had exposed Su Yun's identity. "If I say you're a devil cultivator, then you're a devil cultivator. What else do you need?" Yongyi snorted. This voice did not seem to allow anyone to question it. Lung Shinru's face changed. Even Tian Xing felt that something was wrong. They had originally planned to use Yongya's hand to get rid of Su Yun, and with that, remove Su Yun's name. They would obtain the right to comprehend the stone tablet. But they did not expect that from the very beginning, Yongyi did not plan to hand over the right to comprehend the stone tablet. And at the same time, he even included the powerful immortals that were selected into his plan. The immortals panicked, and the scene became chaotic. No one knew what Yongyi wanted to do. "Aren't you afraid of the wrath of the heavens for doing this?" At this time, Ancestor Hao spoke again. He smiled slightly, and his expression did not show much surprise, nor did he show any fear, as though everything was within his expectations. The wrath of the heavens? In this universe, there might not be only one primogenitor, but there isn't a single unknown realm above the primogenitor. If I can use these quasi-primogenitors and the power of the stone steels to further my comprehension, perhaps I can peek into that unknown realm. Once I reach that realm, I will be the true ruler of this universe. No one will be able to control my will. As long as I can reach that point, will the heavens be angry and the people be resentful? What can you do to me? Yongyi said solemnly. With that said, he raised his hand and grabbed towards Su Yun and the rest. His palms suddenly became huge, as though he wanted to grab the entire ancient ruins in his hand. Yongyi finally revealed his ferocious fangs. Everyone panicked, and all of them ran around crazily. But the moment the big hand descended, a blue light suddenly appeared and exploded in the palm. An unknown, mysterious power spread out in all directions, and the big hand was forcefully pushed back. A terrifying power that could contend against Yongyi spread out. Everyone stood still and looked dumbfounded. They watched his ancestor how leisurely walked in the air towards Yongyi primogeniture. With every step he took, a ray of starlight would appear in the air, and Yongyi primogenitor's palm would be pushed back. What's going on? Everyone was stunned. This is impossible. Itian Xing shouted. This person can actually block Yongyi primogenitor's power. Could he also be primogen? Seven Emotions Goddess said while trembling. Bang! Yongye's attack was pushed back, and he retreated 100 meters. He stared at Ancestor Hao and said solemnly, I had long sensed that something was wrong with you, but I was not sure. I never expected it to be you, Hao Tian. Hao Tian? The Lord Hao Tian who obtained the right to comprehend the stone tablet last time? Yi Guzi shouted loudly. Now you should be calling me Ancestor Hao Tian, right? Yongyi said solemnly. Didn't you die? Your little tricks can kill me? You are too naive. Hao Tian's expression turned cold. Yongyi, in order to pursue a higher realm, you tried to kill me when I had just formed a small world, intending to devour me. However, your scheme did not succeed. Not only did you not devour me, you even let me escape. After escaping from your poisonous palm, I focused on cultivation and comprehended the relics of the predecessors on the stone tablets. Finally, I found the door to the primogenitor realm. However, I did not expect that after you entered the primogenitor realm, not only did you not think about being grateful to the predecessors, but you also used the stone tablets to construct such a shocking scheme, intending to bury the future of the immortal world. Such a person deserves to be killed by even the gods. Today, I will destroy your scheme and destroy everything you have. Ancestor Hao said coldly. His aura was released, and vaguely, he had the intention of suppressing Yongyi. Hearing Ancestor Hao's words, everyone understood that Yongyi and Ancestor Hao knew each other, and after obtaining the right to comprehend the stone tablet, Yongyi relied on his talent to step into the primogenitor realm first, but he was still not satisfied and wanted to explore a stronger realm. So he placed his thoughts on Ancestor Hao, planning to absorb him and use his power to step into a new realm. But all of this did not succeed, and Ancestor Hao guessed Yongyi's plot in this competition, so he specially came here to stop it. Yongyi did not know that Ancestor Hao was still alive. Otherwise, he would definitely be on guard. Hao Tian, even if you're not dead, so what? You stepped into the primogenitor realm later than me, and you must have spent a lot of time healing over the years. Your strength is weaker than mine, and you want to kill me? You can't do it yet. Yongyi said coldly and was about to make his move. His actions frightened all the immortals present. When the ancestors fought, it could be said to be the end of the immortal world. No matter where they fought, it would affect the 10,000 worlds. Su Yun congealed. He also felt that the situation had changed. However, the two of them were like fire and water. A great battle was about to break out, and no one could stop it. The immortals were like ants, fleeing in all directions. Chapter 1521. In the battle between the ancestors, he naturally had to quickly retreat. Su Yun did not dare to be careless, and brought the Dao Shi Great Emperor out. However, just as he was about to leave, several figures suddenly appeared in front of him. Su Yun frowned and looked over. Itian Xing, Yi Guzi, Tao disciple, Wu, seven emotions goddess, and Lung Xinru blocked his way. The divine Lion King's injuries were too severe, so he left early. Everyone looked at Su Yun with unkind expressions, their eyes filled with killing intent. "What are you doing?" Great Emperor Daoshi said in a deep voice as he held his saber. Although he had been recuperating after the competition, his injuries wouldn't be able to recover much in such a short period of time. "Su Yun, as the true Devil Realm's demon lord, since you're here today, don't even think about leaving," Lung Xinru said in a deep voice. "Hand over the ominous sword and Heaven Destroyer sword, and we guarantee that we will only destroy your physical body and not your soul. Even though you're not a devil, there's still a chance that you can be converted. We're not as bloodthirsty as you are. Surrender." In the end, it was still for the ominous sword and the Heaven Destroyer sword. The corner of Su Yun's mouth raised into a cruel smile. He stared at Lung Xinru and said, "A defeated opponent, why do you still dare to say such arrogant words in front of me? What do you have to rely on to say such words? Don't tell me you think you could defeat me with just them?" "Them?" Lung Xinru glanced at the experts of the immortal world behind her and sneered. "Perhaps in the eyes of others, they are very strong. But in the eyes of a pseudo-primogeniture, they are merely a group of ants." Miss Lung, Anata Swordwa, was a little unhappy. Even though everyone was displeased, they didn't refute it because Lung Xinru was right. Even though they were at the peak of the Ascended God Realm, they had no chance of winning against a false primogeniture. The difference in strength between the two sides was too great. However, they would definitely follow Lung Xinru to get rid of Su Yun, because they had offended Su Yun today. If they did not get rid of him now, with Su Yun's vengeful personality, they would definitely die. So, instead of doing that, it was better to settle Su Yun here. "If that's the case, then where did you get the confidence to keep me here?" Su Yun said in a low voice. But just at this moment, a terrifying chi shook towards them, causing the air to tremble violently. Su Yun frowned and saw 4 figures descending from the sky, landing in front of Lung Xinru. As soon as these 4 figures appeared, all the auras in the surroundings seemed to be covered by them. There were 4 strangely dressed people. One of them had a large body and a large elephant head. His skin was slightly blue, and his tusks were exposed. He had a long nose and was covered in battle armor. He looked extraordinarily mighty. The other person had the head of a lion and the body of a human. His body was similarly covered in golden armor, and his fangs were exposed. He was terrifying to the extreme, and his eyes were exceptionally domineering. Just a single glance was enough to shatter one's spirit. The other 2 were rather mysterious. One of them was wearing a cloak, and his face could not be seen clearly. The other was wearing a mask and holding a magic staff. The 4 of them landed and blocked Su Yun like an insurmountable wall. The 4 heavenly kings of the primordial heavenly gods council were the primordial elephant king, primordial lion king, primordial venerable, and primordial shaman god. 4 false ancestors? Su Yun's brows twitched, and he asked solemnly, "Are you all from the eternal heaven gods council?" Su Yun, surrender. The man in the cloak said indifferently. These 4 should be like Lung Xinru. They have accepted Tion's transformation and nurtured a small world. Otherwise, it would be impossible for them to create a small world by themselves. Who exactly is this Ation to have such methods? The demon saint has only nurtured a small world for himself. Su Yun thought, but he would definitely not surrender on the surface. He said indifferently, "Forget about the ominous sword. As for the heaven-exterminating sword, you can rely on your own abilities to take it." With that said, he pulled out the heaven-exterminating sword, and the heavenly will sword and coldly stared at them. "Su Yun, I admit that you're very strong, but it's impossible for you to contend against the 4 heavenly kings of my eternal heaven gods council. Obediently surrendering is the only way for you to continue living." Lung Xinru sneered. At this moment, she finally experienced the feeling of having everything under her control. She did not believe that Su Yun would have any means to resist against such a formation. The 4 heavenly kings were the 4 strongest people in the eternal heaven gods council other than Ation. No one could contend against them. I might not be able to deal with all of you alone. Su Yun glanced at the four heavenly kings and Lung Xinru and said indifferently, but I believe that the eternal heavenly gods' council has sent the four heavenly kings here, and their goal is definitely not for me. Dark Sky should be here soon, right? Lung Xin Ru frowned. You are a smart person. Primordial Sovereign nodded. The reason why the monolith appeared earlier was because of my master, Atian. We are not here to fight for the right to comprehend the monolith, but to seize the ancient monolith. As long as we have the ancient monolith, all the ascended gods and the myriad of worlds will submit to us, and we can use the ancient monolith to nurture even more ancestors and pseudo-ancestors. We will become the strongest existence in the myriad of worlds, and no one will be able to oppose us. Primordial Elephant King laughed. The reason why Atian hasn't appeared yet is probably because he knows that Yong Yi and Ancestor Hao are fighting and is waiting for both of them to be injured before coming out to reap the benefits. Su Yun said in a low voice. So what? Do you want to inform the two ancestors? I'm afraid not. Primordial Lion King roared and bellowed, Kill! Get rid of this person and seize the ominous sword. Roar! Primordial Lion King suddenly transformed into a 30 kilometers tall body. His lion claws slashed down as though he wanted to split the heaven and earth. 5 pseudo-ancestors, 5 peak ascended god realm existences, countless ascended god realm existences, experts of various sects, and the elite troops of the primordial heavenly gods council. Su Yun could be said to be in a tight encirclement and had no chance of winning. But it was not the first time he was in such a situation. Su Yun took a deep breath. He raised his sword and slashed. The heaven-extinguishing sword Qi smashed Primordial Lion King's terrifying lion claws. Let me tell you something first. You want to kill me? Only the ancestors can do it. You? Not yet. With that said, he did not dodge, but instead rushed forward. Daoshi Heavenly Emperor had a straightforward temper. Seeing that Su Yun did not have any fear in such a situation, he was infected and rushed forward with his blade. Su Yun's dual swords were ferocious, like a death god scythe. He swung them crazily. The ancestor Qi overflowed. The ascended god realm people did not dare to get close. And with his attack, his target was Lung Xinru. The great battle of the ancestors erupted, and so did the great battle here. The immortals fled in all directions, and among the fleeing immortals, there were 2 figures that were approaching. In a battle of this level, I can't even protect myself. Aren't you going to help? Long Xianli stared into the distance and spoke slowly. Young master can handle it. What I need to do is to deal with the people behind. Xianli, this place is very dangerous. The battle between the ancestors will soon affect the entire immortal world. I have a treasure here. You can hide in it first. All right. Long Xianli nodded her head, seeing the young lady beside her take out a Linglong treasure pagoda. She opened it, and with a leap, she transformed into a ray of light and disappeared. The young lady kept the Linglong treasure pagoda. Her bright eyes looked over, and she slowly flew over. Boom! Just then, an earth-shattering sound exploded out from the center of the ancient ruins, and a terrifying destructive wave of Qi exploded out from the center of the ruins like a blooming flower. Seeing that, the pseudo-ancestor and the ascended god realm people who were fighting anxiously stopped and took defensive measures. Be careful! The Elephant King roared, his body expanded infinitely, transforming into a gigantic elephant that could support the sky, resisting the terrifying destructive wave of Qi. But Su Yun did not have any intention of defending. The small world in his body was completely activated. The ancestor Qi wrapped around his body, and he rushed towards Lung Xinru without hesitation. Seeing that Su Yun was rushing over, Lung Xinru's face became ugly, but she was not afraid. With so many experts here, how could Su Yun kill her? Furthermore, the experts of the Ascended God Realm and the Ancestor Realm were already attacking Su Yun. If he attacked without caring about anything, he would definitely die. Could it be that he did not consider his own safety? The truth was as such. Just as Su Yun's heaven-exterminating sword was about to reach him, The primordial lord and the primordial witch god had already activated their magic power to attack Su Yun. The seven emotions goddesses and Tian Xing did not fall behind. Attacking from all directions, Su Yun was surrounded and had no chance of escaping. Regardless of whether or not Lung Xinru could withstand this attack, Su Yun's death was destined. It's over. Lung Xinru took a deep breath, took out a protective treasure, and activated it. I will inherit your sword. Take down this world, Lung Xinru muttered. But at this critical moment, a deep shout suddenly exploded in her ears. Xinru, quickly dodge. Lung Xinru's heart trembled. Before she could react, she saw a gigantic hand suddenly reaching out from the void, directly grabbing her into the void. It was Tian. Master. Lung Xinru, who was pulled into the void, was startled, but in the next second, she saw an extremely terrifying scene through the void. A terrifying grayish-white aura erupted from the heaven-exterminating sword in Su Yun's hand, and at the same time, a terrifying demonic mark crawled up Su Yun's body, and in less than a breath of time, the terrifying grayish-white aura spread out in all directions. Bang, 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 bang. The four heavenly kings who were attacking Su Yun were immediately sent flying. Their skin and flesh were torn apart, while the experts of the ascended god realm were in an extremely miserable state. The Inata and the Tao disciples were instantly engulfed by the grayish-white aura, and even their souls disappeared without a trace. Tian Xing and the seven emotions goddesses were further away. After being sent flying, all the chi meridians in their bodies were shattered, and their cultivation was crippled. As for Yi Gizi and the others, they were unable to escape misfortune. Their bodies were shattered, and just as their souls flew out, they were torn apart by the terrifying power in the air. That's the aura of a vicious sword? Lung Xinru's face was pale as she muttered. Chapter 15:22. If Lung Xinru had not been saved by Dark Sky just now, her fate would have been the most miserable because Su Yun's main target was her, and she would definitely die. Su Yun is already able to completely control the ominous sword chi. Although he did not use the ominous sword, the terrifying aura is still extremely terrifying. This person has hidden himself very well. No one knows that he can control the ominous sword chi. The four heavenly kings suffered a great loss. Up in the void, and Tian said in a deep voice, Master, what should we do? Lung Xinru asked. The stone tablet is about to appear. We don't have time to wait. We must refine the stone tablet before it appears. Otherwise, we will not be able to take it out. If it is sealed, we will have to wait for another 100,000 years. With that, Dark Sky brought Lung Xinru across the void and descended into the ancient ruins. In the blink of an eye, dark clouds gathered at the ancient ruins. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. A terrifying lightning dragon enveloped the entire ruins, and a terrifying and powerful pressure swept towards them. How Tian and Yongyi, who were still fighting, felt the sudden powerful force, and tacitly stopped and looked towards the void. Another ancestor? Yongyi frowned. Interesting. It seems like a huge hole will be poked through the myriad heavens realm today. How Tian also laughed. With the three ancestors gathered, they were probably the only three ancestors in the myriad heavens realm. The void trembled, the stars twisted, the violent wind blew, and all the chaotic chi was blown away, leaving behind only the tyrannical and terrifying chi. How Tian and Yongyi frowned. They could feel that the person who broke through the void was slightly stronger than them. Just the aura that appeared was not something they could compare to. Finally, a gigantic crack appeared between the heaven and earth. Following that, an illusory figure that seemed to connect the heaven and earth walked out from the crack. The illusory figure was blurry, but the moment it walked out, it immediately disappeared. When they looked again, a middle-aged man with a pale face wearing a black robe flew over. The crack disappeared, and the sky gradually became clear, but everyone's hearts became nervous with the arrival of the middle-aged man. Lung Xinru followed behind the man. She was still arrogantly looking down at Su Yun, although Su Yun's attack just now had given her a huge shock. But now that Dark Sky had appeared, She was filled with confidence. What was there to be afraid of? If Tian made a move, Su Yun would definitely die. How Tian and Yongyi flew over and stared at Dark Sky. Both of them knew that Dark Sky had come with ill intentions. The two of them did not hold back in their fight. Even though they did not fight for a long time, both of them had consumed a lot of energy and suffered some injuries. Although they were not serious, their condition was clearly not as good as before. Dark Sky seemed to be very strong. If he wanted to fight one of them, he would not be able to defeat him alone. Therefore, the two of them stood together tacitly. The four heavenly kings moved closer to Dark Sky, and no one paid attention to the experts at the peak of the ascended state. Su Yun held onto his swords tightly and stared at the Dark Sky. He had already started to think of a plan to deal with it. "Master, what should we do?" The Dao Shi, great emperor, flew over and said weakly. In the clash, just now, his injuries were not light, and he had used up more than half of his qi. One of his hands was crippled, and it would take a lot of time to recover. His fighting strength had dropped by more than half, and in this kind of situation, it would be difficult for him to even protect himself, let alone fight. "You leave first," Su Yun said in a deep voice. "I will cover you. The target of these supreme experts should be the stone tablet. No one will provoke you." "Then, Master, what should you do?" The Dao Shi, great emperor, asked. "Don't worry, I have a teleportation talisman. I can shatter it and leave," Su Yun said. Even though he said that, Su Yun knew that the ancestors were already able to pull people out from the void. Even if he used the teleportation talisman to escape, they could still pull him back through the spatial tracks. Escaping was very difficult, especially in front of the ancestors. Escaping was almost impossible. Since he could not escape, he could only think of a way to survive. Fortunately, the three ancestors were here, so he would no longer be the target of their attacks. "Young master." Just then, a light voice came from his side. Hearing the familiar voice, Su Yun's entire body trembled. His heart seemed to have stopped at that moment. He turned around stiffly, only to see a lady dressed in green flying towards him. The lady had elegant eyebrows, bright eyes, and white teeth. She was extremely beautiful. Even fairies could not compare to her, especially her unique temperament. It could be said to be rare in the 10,000 worlds, unparalleled in the world. "Why, you are Qing." Su Yun's lips were trembling. His mind was in a mess. Why is Qing here? Is this an illusion? I must be hallucinating. Who is using an illusion on me? Su Yun felt that his mind was in a mess, but he did not feel the slightest ripple of an illusion. Could it be that the four ancient heavenly kings secretly made a move? The ancient heavenly gods have unique methods. Maybe they use some special technique to deceive me, Su Yun thought. But just at this time, Qing had already walked in front of Su Yun. She raised her delicate hand and grabbed onto Su Yun's big hand. She held onto it gently, and her small and tender mouth revealed a fragrant voice. "Young master, don't let your imagination run wild. I'm not an illusion. I am the real Qing. If you don't believe me, you can touch me." She smiled. Her smile was so charming that it could defeat the 10,000 worlds, causing the world to lose its color. Su Yun was absent-minded. He raised his hand and trembled as he caressed Qing, the warm and soft touch lingering on his fingertips. Finally, he extended his hand and forcefully embraced the young lady. He did not say a word, but the young lady could feel the thousands of words in his heart. The two of them just stayed there, ignoring the so-called ancestors, ignoring the dangers, as though there were only the two of them left in the world. After an unknown period of time, Su Yun slowly released his hand. Qing's face was slightly red. She smiled and said, "Young master, the situation here is not looking good. If there's anything, let's go back and talk." "We'll go now." Su Yun took a deep breath and said softly. Qing had already completed her transformation, but the situation here was already difficult for him to control. He could not even protect himself. If Qing was here, it would not be good. "Young master, there's no need to be in such a hurry to leave. The stone tablet is about to appear. Why don't you think of a way to obtain the benefits of the stone tablet? It won't be too late to leave at that time," Su Qing said. Hearing that, Su Yun looked at Qing strangely. Suddenly, he realized that he could not see through Qing'er's cultivation. She was like a deep pool, bottomless. Qing'er, what level has your cultivation reached? Su Yun asked. Ancestor. Qing'er spat out these two words, but these two words made Su Yun feel as though he was struck by lightning. Ancestor? How is this possible? Su Yun was in disbelief. The reason why I reincarnated was to break through to the ancestor realm. I did not use the stone tablet to break through, so reincarnation was extremely difficult. After experiencing many dangers, it is not strange for me to have the strength of the ancestor realm, right? Qing'er said softly. However, no matter what cultivation level Qing'er is at, she is still young master's servant. This will not change. Hearing that, Su Yun could not help but laugh. He patted Qing'er's head, but did not say anything. The current Qing'er had completely awakened. The power of her divine spirit body had completely recovered. She had completed her reincarnation, and her strength had also surpassed before her reincarnation. However, even if Qing'er had the power of the ancestors, facing 3 ancestors and 5 pseudo-ancestors, Su Yun's strength could only be said to be able to protect himself. Dark Sky looked at Yongyi and Hao Tian indifferently. His expression did not change, or it could be said that he did not have any expression at all, and a grand voice came out from his mouth. The two of you leave, the stone tablet is mine. The words were simple, but was filled with incomparable tyranny. If you fight, then come. If you don't fight, please leave. You want me to give up the stone tablet? Don't even think about it. Yongyi naturally would not agree. He had waited 100,000 years for the stone tablet. How could he give up just like that? Unexpectedly, in the next second, Dark Sky actually nodded. All right. With that one word, he rushed towards Yongyi. Terrifying black smoke pervaded out from his body, instantly covering the sky, causing the world to darken. Yongye's face changed. He did not expect Dark Sky to make a move. He looked towards Hao Tian, only to see Hao Tian scurrying to the side, leaping a million li and leaving, not caring about Yongye's life. It seemed like Hao Tian planned to let Yongyi and Dark Sky fight first. If they were to be exhausted, Hao Tian would naturally be the one to benefit. But the three of them did not notice that there was another ancestor beside Su Yun that they had not noticed. You guys take the evil sword, Dark Sky, who was fighting with Yongyi, suddenly said. With that said, the 5 pseudo-ancestors rushed towards Su Yun, and the 4 heavenly kings cooperated with Long Xinru to attack. Come at me. Su Yun was not afraid. Inside the Heaven Destroyer sword, he had sealed a bit of evil sword chi, which he could use. But just at that moment, a small hand suddenly extended out from Su Yun's side. It was holding onto a sword sheath and handed it over to him. Young master, take this sword sheath first, Su Qing'er said. Su Yun was startled, then nodded his head. Qing'er, don't reveal your strength first. If Dark Sky and Eternal Night discover that you also have the power of the ancestors, I'm afraid they will immediately stop. Let them fight first. I can handle these 5 people. If another ancestor appeared, then the situation would change drastically. It was already difficult for Su Yun to control the current situation, and he could not make any more changes. Luckily, Qing'er was able to perfectly conceal her own qi, which was out of Su Yun's expectations. Su Yun said, and then hung the sword sheath on his waist. Can you use the sword inside? Su Yun asked again. Qing, you seems to be acting weird recently. I'm afraid that the evil sword's main body is acting strangely. It's best not to touch the sealing sword inside. I understand. Su Yun nodded his head. His gaze swept across, locking onto the weakest Long Xinru, and rushed over. She was Su Yun's only breakthrough point. Chapter 1523. Seeing Su Yun rushing toward her again, Long Xinru was furious. Did he really think that she was a pushover? The others ignored her, but instead, they always attacked her. In truth, Long Xinru did not know of Su Yun's plans. Su Yun realized that every time Long Xinru was in danger, Dark Sky would always save her, and it was obvious that Long Xinru's position in Dark Sky's heart was not simple. Now that Yongyi was injured, it would be extremely difficult for him to deal with Dark Sky alone. If he used Lung Xinru to restrain Dark Sky, he would be able to buy some time for Yongyi, allowing Yongyi to consume more of Dark Sky's strength. At the same time, he would be able to make the 4 heavenly kings give up on attacking and protect Lung Xinru. As expected, seeing that Su Yun was rushing towards Lung Xinru, the 4 of them moved closer to Lung Xinru, activating their defensive magic treasure. Su Yun's previous attack still made them feel a lingering fear. If it was still that terrifying attack that surpassed the strength of a pseudo-ancestor, it would be extremely difficult for a single person to defend against it. Just then, Su Yun's sword tip suddenly turned and struck towards the ancient Lion King, who was the most heavily injured. The ancient Lion King was caught off guard, but everyone's reaction was still on point. The defensive magic treasure and magic treasure were immediately activated. A large amount of resplendent light flashed and enveloped the ancient Lion King tightly. But a ray of gray light flashed past, and the defensive magic treasure was pierced through like paper. The gray light pierced through the ancient Lion King's chest and struck the small world in his body. The ancient Lion King's body started to tremble, and he spat out mouthfuls of blood. The flesh on his body started to swell, and from time to time, there would be large blisters. The small world was injured, and the ancestor's chi was rampaging in his body. If he did not stabilize it in time, his body would be torn apart by the ancestor's chi. In truth, the pseudo-ancestor realm was a very dangerous realm, because people in this realm had grasped a small amount of the ancestor's power, but their bodies were still at the strength of the God-sealed realm. Once their own small world was injured, the terrifying ancestor's chi would run rampant in their bodies, causing severe injuries to their bodies. This was also the weakness of the pseudo-ancestor realm, and the current 6 pseudo-ancestor realm all had this fatal weakness. Although the ancient Lion King was injured, this was already the ominous sword chi sealed within the heaven exterminating sword. Since the ancient Lion King had lost his fighting strength, Su Yun immediately chased after him with the intention of killing him. But how could the other pseudo-ancestors let Su Yun do as he pleased? The few of them revealed a fierce glint in their eyes. Their anger soared to the sky. The terrifying ancestral aura crazily pressed down on Su Yun. The mysterious techniques almost engulfed him. Kill! The primeval Elephant King's slaughter fists continued to be unleashed, and the terrifying power of the divine elephants pierced through the void, fusing with the heaven and earth divine power, transforming into a terrifying fist that smashed through everything and tore apart Su Yun's ancestral power. At the same time, the primeval venerable took out a golden talisman and threw it at Su Yun. The talisman landed on the ground, and Su Yun's body was surrounded by 81 light dots. The light dots shot out rays of light that wrapped around his body like ropes. Su Yun calmly released his swords, and the Heavenly Will Sword and Heaven Destroyer Sword turned into 2 rays of light that pierced through the void towards the primordial Elephant King. The primordial Elephant King had no choice but to retreat under the pressure of the 2 swords. Su Yun immediately broke free from the ropes and glared at the primordial Elephant King's godly fist. He clenched his fists, and his small world trembled violently as the primogenitor's aura enveloped his fists. Get lost! He punched out with all his strength, clashing with the primordial Elephant King's mountain-like fist. The clash of strength shocked everyone. To actually fight against the primordial Elephant King with fists was not arrogance, but overestimation of one's own strength. However, everyone knew that the primordial Elephant King was powerful, but they didn't know that Su Yun's strength was equally terrifying. Dong! The void cracked, and the power of the slaughter storm swept out in all directions, not losing to the destruction caused by the battle of the ancestors. The primordial Elephant King's arms went numb, and he actually retreated dozens of steps. In terms of strength, the primordial Elephant King was actually at a disadvantage. That was simply inconceivable. Everyone revealed astonished expressions. In truth, the primordial Elephant King couldn't be blamed for this. Su Yun's physical body had been through countless fortuitous encounters and had long become extremely powerful. In addition, his small world was more developed than the primordial Elephant King, so it wasn't strange for him to have such an effect. Bastard! At this stage, you still plan to resist? Lung Xinru rushed over, holding her gray sword and thrusting toward Su Yun. Immediately, a gigantic ghost claw appeared in the void, smashing towards Su Yun. The terrifying ghost claw's every claw was a sword image, as though it wanted to swallow him whole. A strike that perfectly uses the ancestor's power and fuses with the supreme sword Dao's profoundness. Su Yun's expression trembled, and he raised his sword to meet it. No matter how talented Lung Xinru was, she had only cultivated for a short period of time. For things like the sword Dao's profoundness, even with the ancestor's help, she couldn't quickly comprehend it. This completely depended on her own comprehension of the sword, and no one could help her. The Heavenly Will sword carried his strongest sword Dao intent and slashed out. The terrifying sword body released a strange cracking sound, as though the sword body's strength had reached its limit. The two swords clashed. Bang! With a loud explosion, the Elephant King and venerable realm experts that wanted to surround Su Yun were pushed back. The terrifying sword power pounced in all directions, as though it was destroying everything. Blood leaked out of the corner of Su Yun's mouth, his chest trembled, and he retreated. Die! An ice-cold shout came from behind. It was the voice of the primordial witch god. He had been patiently waiting for the opportunity to give Su Yun the most fatal blow. He was like a venomous snake hiding in the shadows. Either he did not make a move, or if he made a move, it would be fatal. A ray of deathly, still light flew out from the primordial witch god's hand. The light seemed to have a spirit. It moved like a dragon and a tiger. In an instant, it traveled millions of miles, and almost no one could react. It landed in front of Su Yun, fiercely smashing onto his body. Su Yun could clearly feel the destructive power blossoming from the point of impact of the deathly still light, and spreading towards his body at an astonishing speed, intending to strike the small world and destroy it. What a terrifying method. After all, he was an immortal personally taught by Tion. His strength was not simple. Young master, be careful. Su Qing was impatient and wanted to help. Don't worry. This won't be able to do anything to me. Su Yun clenched his teeth and said in a deep voice. Following that, his eyes turned scarlet red, and the devil blood in his body started to boil. The destructive aura in his body suddenly disappeared after his blood boiled, and the might of the deathly still light was immediately extinguished. Not only that, Su Yun's aura even rose a little. What? He absorbed my power? The primordial witch god frowned. He did not know that the devil blood in Su Yun's body was the blood of the devil ancestor, and was the symbol of destruction and destruction. The moment his devil blood boiled, the deathly still light was like nourishment, intensifying the boiling of the devil blood, and was completely absorbed. This kind of pure destructive power that directly entered his body, Su Yun did not reject it. Seeing that Su Yun was not only fine, but had even become more spirited, their faces became ugly. The primordial witch god retreated once again, waiting for the next opportunity. A person who had cultivated to his level would no longer be affected by 1 or 2 victories or defeats. The primordial witch god hid himself once again, allowing the primordial Elephant King, the primordial lord, and Lung Xinru to fight. He would not make the same mistake a second time. With such a threat, Su Yun still did not have any advantage. He started to think, and suddenly looked towards the center of the ruins, where eternal night and dark sky were still fighting, and the pure ancestral power had turned that place into a doomsday land. Su Yun's eyes moved. He suddenly turned around and moved towards that direction. Seeing that, the others were shocked. What do we do? Let's go as well. Even if it's just the remnant power of Lord Dark Sky and Eternal Night, it will be difficult for us to defend against them. Are we just going to let it go like this? If he escapes, you and I will not be able to escape. The primordial lord bellowed and rushed over. Young miss, you don't have to go. Wait here. If Su Yun escapes again, please kill him. The primordial witch god said to Lung Xinru, and rushed inside. Lung Xinru heard him and nodded. The turbulence inside was too great. Fighting next to the primogenitor was no different from committing suicide. Although Lung Xinru was in the best condition, she still did not dare to enter, and it was clear that her position in the primordial God Council was far higher than the four heavenly kings. But at this time, a figure suddenly approached Lung Xinru. Lung Xinru was shocked. The figure had suddenly appeared. If not for her intentionally revealing a trace of qi, Lung Xinru would not have known that the other party had already appeared. "Who are you?" Lung Xinru asked. But in the next second, a strange spirit technique entered her eyes. Lung Xinru's body trembled, and like a zombie, she stood in the air. Su Yun, on the other hand, was not feeling good. The last time he fought with the ancestor, Su Yun was able to win because the demon saint had temporarily stimulated his potential when he was creating the small world for him. And at the same time, the sect leader had exhausted and heavily injured the ancestor, giving Su Yun the most advantageous advantage, to the extent that the ancestor could not display much of the ancestor's power. But this time was different. Both Dark Sky and Evernight were powerful primogenitors, and this wasn't a battle between a wounded primogenitor and a false primogenitor, but a battle between two powerful primogenitors. Any clash between them was enough to shake the entire world of immortals. So much so that their might could even pass through space and spread to the 10,000 worlds, causing the people of the 10,000 worlds to feel the fear they brought, enveloping everything in an apocalyptic world. Just as Su Yun neared, another intense collision occurred between the ancestors. The destructive power swept over with an earth-shattering force. Su Yun resisted with all his might, but he was still sent flying. His entire body seemed to be filled with pain, and the primordial kings who were chasing after him were also not feeling good. They were sent flying. They could not even stand properly. How could they kill Su Yun? You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.